roll call coming, Janice.
Coming along.
You're way at the back of the room. Maybe we should come up here.
Okay. I have my glasses on too, so I can't see.
Hello, it's Wilfred here. Can anyone hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Excellent.
Wilfred, is that you participating by phone?
It is. It's 73144. That's me.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, apologies for not being able to make it to my computer. I had to do some physical work and get a delivery down to our water plant and sort that sort of stuff out. So I'm participating via phone for now.
Hello.
You're asking me?
Yeah.
As far as I know, yeah.
Okay.
Can anybody hear Chris Donison?
Hear you.
Good, thank you.
We hear you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Good afternoon. Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, Kirsten, your hair looks awesome. Okay. All right. Did everyone get the revised board agenda? It was sent out earlier. It should be a 15-page document.
Yes, I did.
Okay. Okay. So Wendy, do we have enough people here? It looks like we have enough. Just to go.
Yes, we do.
Okay. All right, so I'll call the meeting to order at 1:30 and state that we're conducting our business today on the territories of the Nuu-chah-nulth people because we're pretty spread out. And from that perspective, we are now going to look at the we're now going to look at the agenda, which has for us a few late items for consideration, both of which are going into item 9.1, which is planning matters. So that's 9.1C and 9.1D. And I believe that there are added materials to the revised board agenda that will go with planning, if not those specific items. Okay. Are there any other items to add or delete or otherwise change from the agenda? Okay, hearing none.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Director McNabb. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, Director Cole. Okay, any comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you very much. So that brings us into declarations. So I will declare that I have a perceived conflict of interest, perhaps even an actual conflict of interest, depending on the rules and how you interpret it. I am a director on one of the boards and limited partnerships that's involved with the proposed transactions. So I'll be removing myself. So I'll be booted out, and Director Osborne will be chairing that particular item. Are there any other declarations of either gifts or conflicts of interest? Director Bodner.
Yes, I have a conflict of interest for 5D, and that's regarding Beauty Island.
Okay. Okay, is there anyone else?
Myself, Penny.
Oh, sorry, Penny.
I also have a conflict of interest on 5D, Beauty Island.
Okay, that's noted. Thank you very much. And
Director Minions, I have a conflict of interest as well.
where are you?
I'm just not on video.
Oh, you're a voice. Okay.
Voice.
Okay.
And it is on the temporary use permit for Braden. And I don't officially have a vote on that one, but I'd like to be put in the waiting room anyways, as it's for a family member.
Okay, I think that makes sense.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, if we can just have staff politely remind us if we somehow forget in the near future. Okay, are there any other items in regards to item 3? Okay, seeing none, that brings us to the adoption of minutes, and there's quite a few. There's 4 sets. The first one is the Board of Directors meeting for July 22nd, 2020.
Move adoption.
Bob Beckett moves.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, Director McNabb. So Director Beckett moves. Director McNabb seconds. Are there any comments, errors, omissions, corrections, etc.? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. That brings us to the COVID-19 Community Recovery Team meeting dated July 21st, 2020.
So move, Beckett.
Thank you, Director Beckett. Seconded by Director Johnson. Any comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, item C is the Alberni Valley Regional Airport Advisory Committee meeting dated July 23rd, 2020. It really bugs me that we went from the 22nd to the 21st and now to the 23rd. But that doesn't matter.
I'll move
Sorry.
Adoption.
Okay, thank you, Director Cote. Do we have a seconder? All right,
Second.
Director Roberts. Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. And finally, we have the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Services Committee meeting dated August 11th, 2020.
Move adoption.
Thank you, Director McNabb.
Second.
Thank you, Director Cote. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, that brings us to petitions, delegations, and presentations. So for those of you in the waiting to give a presentation, we normally have a 10-ish minute time limit. I usually start at the minute after the minute that we start at, just because I don't have seconds on my clock. And if we get to a point and it doesn't seem like you're finished, I'll be holding up either 2 fingers or 1 finger. I'm not trying to interrupt you, because if I do, I'll just interrupt you. I'm just telling you how many minutes you probably have left. That being said, that's just a pause, and we just have a motion to continue on. It rarely happens. So first up, we have Sergeant Peter Dion, and he's the Operations Support NCO for the Port Alberni Detachment. So he's here to give the RCMP report for April to June 2020. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much. Just a late addition to my presentation. Very quickly, I wanted to introduce to the ACRD board our new office manager. This is Wendy. She started with us late in July, and she's a welcome addition. She's very experienced with a lot of different facets of work within the RCMP and different detachments. And she's taking the role previously held by Gayleen Thorogood, and we're happy to have her and have her join our team, and hoping that she's going to move permanently to Port Alberni quickly. Just has to sell a house on the mainland. So Wendy Murphy.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy, and welcome.
Thank you.
Okay,
All right.
So,
So
please take it away.
I'll let you get out of here.
All right.
If you
Thanks,
don't mind
Peter.
closing the door, please. So you have the printed report prepared on behalf of Inspector Eric Rochette, our new officer in charge, who is actively working on site now. He just happens to be on leave this week till the end of the month. So the report fairly straightforward. During this last quarter, our officers received and responded to 3,048 calls for service, 450 in the ACRD, and the remainder of them within the city of Port Alberni. Overall, total number of criminal offenses are down 6% for the quarter compared to 2019. General duty members and crime reduction unit have been diligent in curfew checks and breach charges for bail violations, which we attribute to that downward trend. The detachment's continuing to partner with other enforcement agencies, including joint patrols and enforcement in the ACRD, including our Integrated Road Safety Unit, Central Island Traffic, West Coast Marine Section, and the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. For those of you, for the purposes of expediency, within this document, you'll see the 2021 annual performance plan priorities. These haven't changed from the first quarter, so I'm not going to go over them in detail. These are the goals that our detachment sets for improving areas of concern within our detachment area, as have been identified to us from our partners in the community, including the city of Port Alberni and the ACRD. So moving ahead to the statistics, the document moves on to a graph here, and we detail back to 2016 for statistical data for the second quarter of the year going back to 2016. As you can see, our total calls for service have not varied significantly over the past 5 years. In this quarter, violent crime is at 22 reported incidents. This is a slight rise, but as you can see from the graph, it has been rising generally consistently over the last 5 years. As stated in the previous statistic, property crime is down with 33 incidents reported this quarter, whereas in 2016, the total was 43, and consistently it's been higher than that up until this year. Other criminal code offenses, which are catch-all of all variety of offenses, is up slightly, and this is not unexpected. Drug offenses were at 4 for the quarter, which is, although it's more than the previous second quarters of the years listed, it's not a significant change. Our total criminal code file load for the ACRD during this quarter is down at 76, and criminal traffic is at 14, which is fairly consistent over the last 3 years, but up from the first and second years listed. Assaults are remaining consistent. Assault with weapons or bodily harm, we're at 3, which seems to be the peak or the peak for this quarter. Harassment calls are at 2, which is pretty consistent over previous years. Robberies at 0. Sex offenses at 1. Uttering threats are at 5. And domestic violence is at 9. And there's been conjecture about an increase in domestic violence during this COVID time. I haven't received anything to statistically or practically demonstrate that that's the case, but it's inarguable that people are spending more time at home with COVID protocols, and this may be prompting additional calls for service. Moving on to the last page, our other criminal code matters. Cause disturbances at 4, which is down from most of the previous quarters. Breach of probation at 1 is consistent, and breach of bail is at 9. And 9 is a significant increase in this quarter, and it's one of those situations that I attribute to our crime reduction unit and the general duty members consistently getting out and conducting curfew checks of people released on bail with a condition to be in their homes at certain hours of the day, and that they're checking on that, and where people are found failing to comply with the conditions of the release, breach of bail charges are being submitted. In this quarter, we had one report of intoxicated in public, which is low, and that's kind of an ideal. So that's the ACRD crime stats for this quarter.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Director Cote, please, and you're muted. And then Director Beckett.
Thank you. Thank you for this report. Just like to give a thanks for the patrol that happened on Sprout Lake. I know I've heard of one anyways, where RCMP were out. So thank you for that. With the Marine Patrol missing this year, we don't really have any eyes on the lake, shall we say, that gave responsibility to boaters for their conduct. So thank you very much. And I'd like to know, these numbers don't include the city of Port Alberni, do they?
They do not.
So how do the numbers compare to with the city of Port Alberni then?
Pretty minimally compared to the city of Port Alberni. I do have the city's statistics with me. I thought somebody might ask me that question.
Thank you.
Simply for, in simple statistics, calls for service in this period for the city of Port Alberni were 2,600. And for the ACRD, there were 450. So essentially 6 times the call volume to the city as to the ACRD.
The reason why I asked that is because I'm just wondering how criminal activity or calls to the RCMP are being identified during this COVID time, and if there's an increase or staying the same or decrease. Just curious. Thanks.
If we take a look at if we take a look at the overall numbers, and I'm just going to be doing some quick off the top of my head math here. If we add the Q2 numbers for the ACRD and the city of Port Alberni together, we're at right around 3,000 for this year. Last year, the quarter was higher for the ACRD and at 3,000 for the city of Port Alberni by itself. So we're probably down to about a seventh. So essentially about 14% overall call volume.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I think I have Director Beckett and then Director Cole next.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sergeant Dion, thank you very much for your report, especially encouraged by the crime reduction slash breach of bail and the good work your officers are doing. My question or comment refers to the statistics for our own particular area. I represent the Bamfield area, and I'm not sure how the other directors feel, but at least annually, I'm wondering if the report could reflect a breakout showing all of the particular electoral areas and their stats to have a better understanding or to know how we're faring in our own specific communities. Thank you.
In simplest terms, I don't know. I do know that in our reporting system that the primary breakdown on reporting is to the rural or to the city. That is something that I can take to Wendy Murphy, who's our prime coordinator, to ask if we can have that kind of a breakdown. It may require some retooling and reconfiguring for that to be possible, but I will put the question to her, whether that's an option that we can look at. Our BC Prime, which is the police reporting information management environment, does map physically all of the locations of calls for service. So I'm going to say that in theory that should be possible, but I don't believe that that kind of breakdown for reporting has been established at this point. So I'll put the question to Wendy Murphy and pass on your question to Inspector Rochette, so perhaps that can be spoken to at the next quarter.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm not looking to add workload to, especially when it comes to administration. And that's why I suggested even if it was annual, it would give us some indication. But thank you for considering that and follow.
Oh, you're welcome. My thoughts are that if it's possible to break it down to that kind of mapping, once that's done, it's probably not a challenge once the searchability is put into place, but above my pay grade for technology.
Okay. Thank you for that. Next up, I have Director Cole. And did I miss anyone? No? Okay. Please go ahead.
Hi, my question is can you speak to it all if there's been any patrol or routine patrol of the area out here at West Main around Kennedy Lake at all during these last few months?
You're referring to like a just a proactive patrol just for to demonstrate a presence?
Yes, it only because I'm looking at it from a perspective of safety and health and all of that from another hat that I wear for BC Ambulance Service, but it is, I have noticed that there have been some routine, I guess it would be routine, traffic patrol from across island. I guess that's where they come from, but I think they're just concentrating on the highways and the communities and not some of the outlying areas. And I was just wondering if that was happening when I understand that Sprout Lake has had some help or presence. I'm wondering if there was anything, has been anything done around West Main.
No, there hasn't been anything dedicated towards a presence to the Kennedy Lake area. What has been happening along Highway 4 is that we're getting an increased presence, from my perception from last year, from the traffic units that are based out of Nanaimo and Parksville. And I'm very appreciative of that. They've been a real help for us. The Kennedy Lake is one of those overlap areas where we share, depending on where the dividing line is cut for prime reporting, we may have a division between ourselves, Ucluelet and Tofino. But as far as proactive patrols to Kennedy Lake, I can tell you that that's not specifically happening from our office, and thus far it isn't something that's been brought to my attention as something that's required or that there's a community need for. But it's something we can certainly speak to the provincial road safety resources that are out there.
Yeah, no, the jurisdiction, I think there are a lot of sort of stakeholders or people who would sort of around that area, but I know that we're going out there for overdose calls and it's wall to wall, people living in their cars and no social distancing and drugs and really destruction of the environment and the ecosystems, and just really bad things are happening out there. It's the absolute worst it's ever been. And it's been about 2 weeks since I've been out there now. And I had heard about how bad it was, but until you see it and until you experience it, I think anybody on this call would be really shocked that that's happening in our backyard.
Okay, the question I would have to you on that is if there's a specific location that you're referring to, if perhaps you could contact me after the call, that we could perhaps seek to identify where that location is and and which is the police detachment of jurisdiction for that area?
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Next up, I have Director Roberts.
Yeah, through the chair, thank you for that. And to Director Cole, I received the same similar complaints over a period of time, and I have referred that particular issue to the Flynn Row through their enforcement branch, and I've heard nothing back yet. I know that staff, including Mr. Kevis, also received the bylaw enforcement through the bylaw enforcement office, the similar comments. So, and I don't know, through Sergeant Dion, it would probably be more an involvement with the Ucluelet RCMP, and if that's part of a different detachment, then that certainly would help. And I know the community, Indigenous communities out there are quite concerned. This has been going on for some time. And I believe it's forestry land, but I know it's also part of the Taloquiet community as well. So if there's anything that can be done with and through the RCMP, that would be fantastic. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much for that. Are there any other comments? Okay, on behalf of the ACRD, I'd like to thank you for your report, Sergeant Dion, and look forward to having you or the inspector back next time.
Thank you very much. I'll pass on your concerns and notes to the inspector, and hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so that brings us to the next item, which is from the Habitat Conservation Trust Foundation with Mr. Dan Buffett and Mr. Steve Kazuki. And I'm not certain which one of you are going to speak first, though, so please just chime in.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Dan Buffett from the Habitat Conservation Trust Fund, and Steve Kazuki joins me as well. I will just share my screen just to get a presentation that we have started and just hand it over to Steve to say a few introductory words.
Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Kazuki with the Forest Enhancement Society of BC. And as Dan is getting set up, maybe I'll just share with you one of the mandates that we were given by the provincial government was to help improve habitat for wildlife in British Columbia. And when we looked around, we saw that there was the Habitat Conservation Trust Foundation that already existed for almost 40 years. And they have a ton of biological expertise and a lot of administrative strengths in terms of how to solicit projects and deploy the funding and giving it to the people that can make things happen. So for us, it was a no-brainer to partner with HCTF.
Great, thank you. And I'll just do a quick check that everybody can see the screen up in front of you. You have a small mammal from the weasel family called the marten peering in at our meeting. So that's the small mammal you're looking at there today. So, again, just to give you a little bit of background of our organization. So my organization, the Habitat Conservation Trust Foundation, we fund conservation projects on the ground for habitat, for fish and wildlife. And we also provide some education resources and funding to get people out to learn about BC's freshwater fish and wildlife. And Steve, just wanted to hand it over to you if you want to say a few words about FESBC.
Yeah, forest enhancement, we're quite young. We were only created in 2016 by the provincial government, and they gave us $235 million to do good work in the forest. And I'll speak a little bit more about that later. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks. And really what it is today is just to give you information about how both of our organizations are working together on habitat for fish and wildlife. And really both of our organizations are funding organizations. And what we're doing is actually putting the resources into communities who have the experts for fish and wildlife. So it might be First Nations or government or consultants or local stewardship groups. So you'll see that theme throughout. I'll give you a little bit of background about the Habitat Conservation Trust Fund. So we are a nonprofit charity in BC. We were founded in 1981. And how we were founded was by hunters and anglers and trappers and guides who said, we're paying a license, but we're and willing to pay an additional fee called a surcharge. And we want that to go back to improve conservation outcomes for fish and wildlife in BC. So that's how we started. And now today that surcharge on licenses totals about $6 million a year for us. And we also generate additional funding from court awards, from provincial court awards, from the province, sometimes for specific species like caribou or invasive mussels. And another key part is actually funding from partners, such as the Forest Enhancement Society that Steve is here today. And that really helps our organization take really great quality proposals and fund them. And so we fund more, since 81, we funded more than $189 million in projects over this time. And typically our approach is we invite people who have a good idea for fish and wildlife, improving fish and wildlife. You know, whether that's an individual, an organization, a government, First Nations. We bring these proposals in once a year. We have technical expert groups from government, non-government consultants, and they evaluate each of these proposals, recommend which ones should be funded, and then prioritize them. And that's how our funding. So when our funding runs out, that's where we draw the line. Typically, we get about 3 times the funding request that we can fund each year. And we typically fund, as you see, just a little over 200 or so projects per year. So, you know, this year was a banner year for us. We set a record for funding over $9.2 million in funding in BC. And as you drop down into smaller geographic areas like Vancouver Island, we funded a little over $1 million for 30 projects. And you know, a couple feature projects I'll just point out are that occurred within this regional district. The Alberni Clayoquot was funding looking at marbled murrelets, and that's the picture of the birds you're seeing there on the top right of your screen. Some work in Tranquil Creek where funding was given to the West Coast Forest Society to do some improvement to fish habitat. And we also fund a number of wild schools and support for schools. So we have one of the schools, elementary schools, Maquina in Port Alberni there. They have a place-based education program that's supported. We fund about 15 facilitators on Vancouver Island who work individually with each school to help integrate conservation elements within the curriculum. And we also fund a number of GO grants, which are grants for schools to pay for the cost of buses to get students from schools into the environment. And just a quick map of projects that show within the regional district here, a couple of the projects I mentioned earlier, an amphibian project as well. And then I know it's a little bit outside the regional district, but quite a number of fish-related projects getting people out to fish that often crosses over into this regional district as well. Steve, I'll just hand it over to you.
All right. Well, like and similar to the HCTF, we are also a proponent-driven model, which means that we believe that the expertise it resides within your local area, and that you folks are very likely the ones best suited to know what the priorities are in your local area. And so with that, we invite people to apply for funding. And so far, we have granted to local groups $233 million worth of projects, spread over 250 projects province-wide. And you can see the categories. A big one for us is, and what's really important to citizens and local governments, is wildfire risk reduction, particularly in dry interior communities that are very vulnerable. And wildlife habitat, forest improvement. Fiber recovery is important, but most of our fiber recovery actually gets counted as forest carbon. And in forestry, in accordance with international carbon accounting requirements and standards that the climate scientists from folks in the provincial government in Victoria, as well as UVic, tell us that there's 3 ways that are eligible First of all, is planting trees on areas of crown land that otherwise wouldn't be reforested. And because those trees, when they grow, they sequester carbon from the atmosphere and suck it out of the air. Secondly, we can fertilize, because when we make the trees grow faster, they sequester carbon dioxide faster. And then thirdly is actually an emissions avoidance. We'll take slash piles after logging is completed, and rather than burning those piles, which creates a lot of emissions, not only in carbon dioxide, but also very potent greenhouse gases like nitrous oxide and methane. And if instead, with our funding, we can help that fiber, waste fiber, be used to avoid the emission, well, that's a real environmental win, because in British Columbia, we have numerous cogen plants that make electricity. In my hometown where I live, there's a power plant that's powered by waste wood fiber. And that plant alone, that one plant, generates enough electricity to power 20,000 homes. So we can be self-sufficient in clean, green bioenergy just on the electrical side. When you make pellets, those pellets are exported around the world, often used as a substitute for coal or other fossil fuels. So that's a really big win. And if that wasn't good enough, it generates a whole bunch of jobs at the same time. So next slide, Dan. We have some projects close. They're your neighbors out at Duncan with the Cowichan tribes. And by the way, 31% of our funding has been so far to date allocated to First Nations, where they are the lead agency, or projects that have very significant First Nations involvement. And they wanted to do some riparian restoration. Couple of projects around using that waste wood after logging in the North Island. You might be aware there's a fiber shortage for a lot of the secondary fiber consumers, like pulp mills, like pellet plants, like cogen facilities. So we're helping to turn that waste wood into usable products, generating economic activity, and helping the climate. And then also provincially, we're doing a whole bunch of work in reforesting the areas that were devastated by the 2017 and 18 fires. Thanks, Dan.
Great, thanks, Steve. And so, together, our partnership between both of our organizations began in 2016. Looking at the strengths and where the overlaps are of each organization. In particular, for us, it was where FESBC brought in, that linkage with the forest component or forest habitat that we focus quite a bit on, and that connection with the science and the people in the industry. And FESBC brought their money and a commitment of $3 million to the HCTF that we can then use the strength of our proposal and grants system and evaluation, and use funding to either fully fund proposals and also fund further proposals over time. And a couple of these co-funded projects include the looking at bat diversity here with one of the pictures on the right. And for some of you that that may or may not be aware, just a number of the bat populations are dropping because of what's called a white nose syndrome. And so doing a number of work within the regional district on mapping important bat areas and where some, and trying to determine if this white nose syndrome has been detected yet. Another project looking at the fur bearers. So as we started off the presentation, looking at the population of a number of small mammals, whether that's weasels and martens throughout the island. And then finally, one of Vancouver Island's favorite Vancouver Island marmots there up in Strathcona Park, and doing a number of habitat mapping throughout the park and looking at habitat opportunities. So really, Steve and I just wanted to leave it there for you, just to make you aware of the investment from organizations that are coming from a lot of different sources, but ultimately really putting this in the hands of the experts that are within your community on the ground in fish and wildlife, and coming from funding a number of different groups and people. And it's not just about government; it's a lot about working with First Nations, NGOs, and a lot of us local groups. So I think we'll leave that there. If there's time for questions, we're happy to answer, but really appreciate the time and opportunity today.
Yep, good timing, and there is time for questions and answers. So if anybody has any comments or questions, please go ahead. I have Director Bodner.
Yes, thank you for that presentation. That was good information. I'd like to know if there has been any funding projects regarding picking up garbage on the beaches of Tofino and Ucluelet in particular. And since the tsunami in Japan, I mean, who knows what's close to shore there under the water that we don't see. So has anybody paid any attention to that? Is this the way to go for funding for that kind of a project?
There's potential. One of the components we have within HCTF is we end up funding within estuary, so near estuary. So Tofino covers that part. But as you move more into the marine, a lot of the funding that comes from that would be with the Pacific Salmon Foundation, because they're more on the marine side where they get their funding. And I have had some discussions with their executive director too about some joint projects that sort of cover both, our foundation's, geographic area. So, that I'd be happy to, follow up as well after as well too, because I think sort of bringing both those organizations together would be useful in that particular instance of looking beaches and looking at what can be done there. It has to have a strong fish and wildlife. So sometimes picking up garbage isn't quite enough, but if you combine that with other improvements in the creeks and other areas, then you've got a strong package that'll be a lot more competitive in our funding.
Thank you.
Okay, Director Roberts.
Yeah, thanks for that through the chair. Thanks, Dan. I'm just wondering, have you done any work in the area of Thornton Creek Hatchery or Twin Rivers or Tocourt Bay area?
Not lately. I have to check the files if we have. Honestly, I'm relatively new to HCTF in the last year or two, but I know we have worked traditionally with a number of hatcheries, and that creek does ring a bell. So not in the last few years, but I think historically we have.
Thanks for that.
Yep.
Are there any other comments or questions? All right, seeing none, I'd like to thank you both for your presentation, and on behalf of the regional district, yeah, that was very informative and helpful.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All righty. Oh, Dan, if you could stop sharing your screen.
Oh yes, sorry about that.
No worries.
Thank you. Thanks for the reminder.
Okay. All right. I think next up we have Christopher Donaldson. He's the Executive Artistic Director for Music by the Sea, and you have an update. So thank you and welcome.
I do, and thank you all for having me at the meeting. It's been an extraordinary season for everybody, as you can imagine, in the arts. Just to recap briefly, 2019, for some reason, we had possibly our worst year when it came to ticket sales. It was about a 20% reduction. And so we ran a deficit, of course, as we do many years anyway. But it did bring into high relief something that our board has been working on for many, many years, which is namely that the organization is not sustainable when its earned revenues are in the $40,000 range. I mean, the fact that we sell $40,000 worth of tickets in Banfield is a bit of a miracle on its own, and that's great. However, it is the governor for all of our grants and all of our private sources of funding. In other words, if what we're doing really should be a $500,000 a year operation, which is what it should be, to pay somebody like me when I retire what they're not paying me now is not going to happen. We're going to have to pay somebody properly. Plus, there should be an administrator and an assistant and all the other stuff that a small arts organization would have. So what happened last year is it came very, very clear that we needed to increase our earned revenues, because in the arts, it's a kind of a loose thing, but we like to think that earned revenues would be 1/3, public grants could maybe be 1/3, and private sources such as foundations, corporate sponsorships, and donors would be another 1/3. In our case, of course, that's never really worked out to that way. Our public funding has been far less than 1/3. But at any rate, with the $30,000 or $40,000 earned revenue base, it's not possible to get the larger grant. So we had to get more revenues. Now, a year and a half ago in Victoria, there was a new international marina that opened in the Inner Harbor, and it's designed for luxury yachts over 65 feet in length. And oddly, the building is beautifully reminiscent of the rec center at the Marine Science Center. And I'd been looking all over Vancouver Island for a venue that we could, after we've done everything in Banfield, duplicate it somewhere else. Now, I resisted that from my board for many years because I said, you know, the thing that we were doing at Banfield was creating a myth. In other words, that there was this music event of such quality, but you had to go to this very difficult place to see it. And so for many years, I felt if we also did a run out to something else afterwards, we would be cannibalizing our own reason for being in Banfield. Since that time, though, we've established the mentorship school there as well. And I think our branding is so strong now that there's no risk of that happening. In fact, I came to the conclusion if we could do everything in Banfield as we do it, and then bring the whole crew down to Victoria to do 1 week on the Inner Harbor in Victoria, it would actually end up increasing our awareness of everybody's awareness of Banfield, and they could see the quality of the work, and then we could tell them, look, the real thing is in Banfield. It's much better there. So we would we would use the same house programs for both events. So I had projected that we would have been being able to increase our earned revenues in 2020 to up to north of $100,000, which is exactly what we need to do to then build. That would change all of our platforms for sponsorships, for public funding, and everything else. So the projected budgets over the next 4 or 5 years for the federal government took us up to $400,000 or $500,000 in those 3 or 4 years. So we were very excited. Then, of course, I went to work like crazy in January. And then, of course, that all had to come to a grinding halt. Now, we did keep our options open for as long as possible this year because we just didn't know. And we were a small organization and we're much more flexible and able to turn on a dime than larger corporate entities. However, it became very clear by, I guess, about April or May, that there was no way we would be able to do it in Banfield this year. A, the Marine Science Center shut down everything. B, nobody in the community really wanted gatherings from outside the community in Banfield. And our artists that were traveling internationally weren't going to be able to travel either. So it became very clear. We had a board meeting and we decided to shut everything down that we knew we couldn't do, but remain open to what we might be able to do. So what then happened was that the new International Marina approached me, and they were doing noise-making sessions on the dock at the marina at 7 o'clock in support of the frontline healthcare workers, and they wanted to start streaming some concerts after that. Well, I was a bit dubious about that, and there was no piano in that venue. So then they decided to turn their sights on my apartment, which was just around the corner, overlooking the new Johnson Street Bridge, and I have a grand piano in that corner. So I got talked into it. We started streaming these concerts from my apartment. We did a total of 9 of those, and we had guest artists. It started off just me, then we had guest artists, and then we did one on Canada Day at the marina, and Ken Levine sang some songs and the anthem. And so we did a total of 9 of those. And then we thought, well, the irony was at our board meeting, we were finding out that we were getting more people that were aware of Banfield and Music by the Sea in Banfield than we would have otherwise. And our online audience is getting quite substantial, 30,000 or so. So this is a bit of a silver lining. So then we decided to do an actual Music by the Sea concert at the International Marina. And the first one was August the 9th. These are all archived on our Music by the Sea Facebook and are worth looking at. In fact, the last one, the 9th of August, is spectacular. I mean, this is very serious stuff. 4 cameras, a big jib moving all over the place. So a huge technical crew, great sound. People have told me they haven't seen a streaming concert this good. So that was August 9th. That was our last one. And we have another one coming up on the 30th, which is this Sunday. So if you're interested at all, it is certainly worth tuning in. And what we do normally, of course, is have classical and jazz. And these concerts, we can't have an audience, of course, and we're all socially distanced, but we have classical players on one side and jazz players on another side. And what makes these so successful is that normally these streamed concerts are kind of flat because there's no audience. I mean, and it affects the performance. But what happened, I went back and forth from classical to jazz to classical to jazz to classical to jazz. And the classical people became the audience for the jazz players, and the jazz players became the audience for the classical players. And it really made for a very emotionally powerful concert. So it really surprised me. It was like walking the gangplank. It was a real experiment, and it really worked. Now we're doing one more. I don't know if we're going to keep being able to do them because I do have to pay people, but the artists are coming. I paid their expenses to get there. This one coming up, 9 out of the 10 are coming from off the island. So we're very cognizant of social spacing. I'm hoping Dr. Kurt Smetcher will be able to attend. Kurt's from Bamfield, and he's a high-ranking specialist in the medical field. I'd love to have him in the room to guarantee to everybody that we're doing everything we should be doing. But we are paying the artists with donations. And the last concert, we did raise $2,500. So in addition to covering all the artists' expenses, I was able to issue a check of $250, which is not really a fee for any of these people, but it is an honorarium, and it's something to keep it going. The fact of the matter was most of these artists were just starved to have an opportunity to perform. And the reason I'm doing all of this, and it certainly is a lot more work than one might think would be necessary, is I'm just trying to keep the wheels on this bus so that if next year we can do exactly what we had planned for this year. There's no guarantees of that, but I wanted to keep and cement the relationship with the new marina because it really was a very positive, forward-looking plan to make Music by the Sea finally matriculate to the point where it could start to achieve the funding it needs to become a permanent and sustaining thing, you know, after I can. Basically, everybody, you'd all know I'm just trying to make this so I can quit because right now our revenues are not enough to really, we can't have a succession plan until we have a sustainability plan, is what that comes down to. So we'll see how we go. We won't really know until the fall about next year in terms of our funding. But then, of course, our other problem, like every other organization and every other business that I know, is it's very difficult to plan. It's very difficult for us to know exactly what will happen next year. And we might have to have a plan B. But I'm glad you all know what we're doing. I know it's a small thing compared to some things, but it's a big thing for Bamfield, and it's a big thing for the artists. And we have become nationally and internationally known. Small is not necessarily not high quality in this business. You might know that when it comes to education, certainly the mentorship program, it's very small, but those are the most deluxe programs where the most promising artists get the most intensive time from their mentors. That's it for now. I'd love to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you for that. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Director Beckett, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris, thank you for the presentation. And most importantly, thank you for not forgetting Banfield. It would have been easy to perhaps walk away from our community given the challenges that you're having. So thank you for that. And you know, I believe good things happen for a reason. And I think you're going to come back stronger than ever. I really believe that our provincial government is going to announce improvements to the road, and that's going to complement what you're doing. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for your commitment.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any other comments? Okay, so with that, I think just on behalf of HWID, I'd just like to recognize the work that's been done in regards to Music by the Sea. And I have a lot of memories in regards to when this was first started being put together and the very positive interactions between the HWID and Music by the Sea, and how that helped bring the Bamfield community and HWID together. So there's very strong kind of community building involved in these kind of events and these kind of traditions. So that's something that the preservation of that is just as important. So I think in this kind of new normal, we do have to find ways to make this sustainable and make it something that will bring us together. And so I'd like to acknowledge that and wish you the best of luck. And on behalf of the ACRD, I'd like to thank you for coming in and providing an update, because I think the aspects that affect the arts and culture within the region are as important as updates in regards to the business or sports and recreation and so on and so forth. So I appreciate you taking
very
the time.
much. And let me just add that I have always deeply appreciated the support from everybody I've worked with in the First Nation, the Hawaii First Nation, and the local community of Banfield, and the regional support from the ACRD and the grant and aids. And I've told you every year that when we get one of those grant and aids, I know that they're not meant to be permanent. And I've always wanted to get to the point where I could say, we don't need anything, but that hasn't occurred yet. And I think we're close to it. So maybe next year, maybe 2021 will be the year.
I certainly hope so. So I'd like to thank you once more, and I'll talk to you later.
Thank you all. And I'm going to leave the meeting now. Okay.
Okay.
I got a few other things. Ciao, ciao, ciao.
Have a good one.
Thanks so much. Oh.
Okay, and that brings us to our fourth person, which is Helen McPhail-Sims in regards to the rezoning application RD 19010. So please take it away whenever you're ready, Helen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board.
Oh, Director Cote, sorry. Did you have a comment? You're muted.
Yes, I'm in conflict. So it would be Director Bodnar.
Oh, okay, so we'll wait for. So we'll put you in the waiting room, and then we'll get you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And I think that'll be Janice who will do that. Okay, there we go. Okay, sorry, Helen, please go ahead.
That's okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name's Helen Sims from Sims Associates Land Surveying and Fern Road Consulting. We are the agents for this application. The purpose of this application is to give individual ownership to the owners of Beauty Island according to the share percent on title. Beauty Island was purchased by the Kennedy and Ostrander families before 1972. Subsequently, the Sherwood family bought the Ostranders family share. The original owners left it to their children, who in turn left it to their children. The current owners are third and fourth generation owners. Sims Associates surveyed the island, and because the lake level is much higher than when the original district lot was created in 1908, there will be a large return to crown around the perimeter of the island. And I believe that page 36 in your agenda has the plan that we've prepared. The remaining area is 5.4 hectares or 13.3 acres. And we have shown 3 lots that represent the share interest. Before submitting the application to ACRD, we had a registered on-site wastewater practitioner investigate the soils to make sure there are appropriate soils for septic disposal. He concluded that the soils meet the current island health standards and the existing systems do not show any sign of a health hazard. The share structure is 50%, 25%, and 25%, and the proposed plan represents the same in area. Lot 1 is 50%, will be owned by a sister and brother with 1 child in the next generation. Lot 2 is 25%, will be owned by 2 sisters and their 2 children who are both on title. Lot 3 is 25%, will be owned by 2 sisters who have 5 children between them, but the children are not on title. Currently, proposed Lot 1 has 1 cabin of approximately 1,500 square feet. Proposed Lot 2 has 2 small cabins and a couple of sheds. And I would like to point out that on our plan, we have marked 1 cabin and 2 sheds. Really, the shed that's closest to the water is a cabin that was marked in error. Both cabins are within the 15-meter development permit area and are very old. Although they are both legal non-conforming because of the siting, the owners are permitted to make repairs, so that gives the family 2 individual cabins. Proposed Lot 3 is a partially built cabin of approximately 1,200 square feet where ACRD has placed a stop work order because the zoning does not allow another dwelling unit. The owners agree that the size of the cabins should be limited, but instead of having 1 large cabin per lot, request 2 smaller cabins. The proposed zone created by ACRD is 1 cabin per lot, but with 5% lot coverage. Areas are Lot 1, 2.7 hectares or 6.6 acres, and Lots 2 and 3 are 1.35 hectares or 3.3 acres each. Given that the proposed lot coverage is 5%, that equates to approximately 14,500 square feet of buildings on proposed Lot 1 and approximately 7,250 square feet of buildings on each of proposed Lots 2 and 3. Our proposal was for a minimum parcel size of 1.2 hectares or 3 acres and 2 cabins per lot, with the size of the cabins limited to 1,500 square feet per cabin, plus approximately 500 square feet of sheds for the entire lot. Each would be, since it would be possible to subdivide the proposed Lot 1, this means the total build out of 8 cabins of 1,500 square feet plus sheds on the island. This equates to a maximum of 13,500 square feet of building on the entire island. The area of the island is 13.3 acres or approximately 579,300 square feet. Proposed building area is that we have proposed is 13,500 or 2.3%, not the 5%. The proposed zoning of 1 cabin per lot means that 2 families who own proposed Lot 3 must share cabin space. Eventually, proposed Lot 1 could be subdivided and have a 2nd cabin, and proposed Lot 2 has 2 cabins already. And although they are legal non-conforming, the owners can continue to repair them forever. This leaves the owners of proposed Lot 3 in an equitable position. I understand that having 2 cabins per lot makes it sound like eventually there will be an application to subdivide proposed Lots 2 and 3 again. However, they are only 1.3 hectares each, and Island Health will not allow lots of less than 1 hectare to be created when on a septic field unless there is community water. Our clients would sign a covenant to be registered on title restricting further subdivision of proposed Lots 2 and 3, which would give ACRD the unfettered authority to refuse any application in the future. This proposal was on the agenda of the Sprout Lake APC on the 20th of July, and there was a very long discussion. The motion that the APC passed was for staff to look at the options for 2 dwellings per proposed lot and the total square footage of buildings, then bring it back to the APC for discussion. We propose that the lot coverage be changed from 5% to 2.5%. We also propose the zoning be changed to 2 cabins per lot plus storage sheds. In addition, we propose the size of the cabins be a maximum of 1,500 square feet and the total area for storage sheds per lot would be a maximum of 500 square feet per lot. We need a zone that works for the owners, as it makes a big difference if the owners must share 1 large cabin versus having 2 smaller cabins. It is the same footprint, but a huge difference in how the cabins function. Therefore, we request that the board rescind first reading of the bylaw. We also request that we work with staff to create a zone by cutting the lot coverage in half, but allowing 2 cabins per lot, then send this back to the APC. We seek the board's direction for how to move forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to thank you for your presentation again, Ms. McPhail-Sims, and we will get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, Janice, if we can perhaps let Directors Bodner and Cote back in. There we go.
I will leave the meeting now.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. So that brings us to item number 6, which is a request for correspondence for action. And that is an item from the City of Port Alberni regarding a request to work with the ACRD on establishing a bus route to East Vancouver Island. So, Douglas, would this be something you speak to?
Mr. Chair, it's a matter that, as the report suggests, as the letter suggests, has been brought up, and the board will have to decide what it advances for its strategic priorities, for its strategic plan in its discussions next month. But there's a number of transportation matters that are being talked about or in the in different stages of development, and so this could be added to that as well if the board wished to consider broad transportation issues or this matter individually. Thank you.
Thank you. And there is a suggested possible motion there. Are there any comments or questions? Especially if the city would like to add a background.
I can comment, Chair Jack, if you have a moment.
Please go ahead.
I just wanted to comment that this is an issue that has been brought to the city multiple times. We've received some letters, and of course, like some of you do, we hear it out in the public from people, you know, that there's just starting to be more and more of a growing demand for this. So we thought that rather than the city talk about it on our own, it would be a great opportunity for us to pass it on to the regional district and see if there's an interest in talking about it. We're not committed one way or the other, but I think that it's worth discussing as, you know, the island generally changes and adapts going forward. And I think that taking it to strategic planning to see if it's a priority is the perfect place for it.
Great, thank you. It does seem like this does fit with the whole idea of the connection to the West Coast as well. We could have that kind of conversation right next to or as a part of the same conversation. Okay. Does anyone have any other comments or questions or motions?
I will make the motion that's presented.
Okay, thank you, Director Minions. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Beckett. Okay, any further comments? Okay, seeing none. It's a bit longer for me to do that. I'm showing non-video folks on my screen now. Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Alrighty, thank you very much for that. That brings us to correspondence for information. Would anyone like to pull anything out? Okay, seeing none, there is a motion to receive all of the items for information.
So moved, Beckett.
Okay, Director Roberts, did you have a comment or would you like to second?
Seconded.
Okay. Okay, with that in mind, any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Okay, that brings us to the next item, which is a request for decision regarding the ACRD board and committee meetings and public participation during the pandemic. So Wendy, would you like to speak to that, please?
Yes, yeah. I'll just give a brief report. So as reported to the board at the last Board of Directors meeting, Minister Order 192 is requiring local governments to commence more normal operations by making best efforts to allow members of the public to attend open meetings of the local government, still while protecting the health and safety of the public staff and directors and following the public health requirements. So regional district staff did investigate 3 options, which are outlined in the report, on to increase public participation in board and committee meetings. We did look at several facilities around the Alberni Valley to hold in-person meetings. We did a mock setup of Cherry Creek Hall. It would be doable, but the tables were so far spread apart. We'd have to get a sound system, microphones to be able to hear everybody, and still could only accommodate 8 public in the room. One of the options I also suggested was a hybrid approach that we could look at. Our boardroom is all set up now for live streaming meetings. So we could have a few directors present, 1 staff, and 5 public. The maximum for our boardroom is 8 people. So we wouldn't be able to accommodate full committee or board meetings in there right now. We could look at other facilities for committee meetings if that was the wish, and continue to hold board via Zoom. Another option we're looking at, the District of Tofino is using it, and I believe UQLA and the City of Port Alberni is looking at it, is called Zoom Webinar, where public can actually on your website sign up to participate in this Zoom webinar. You wouldn't be able to see them. They wouldn't be able to speak, but if they wanted to speak during question period, they could just send a message to the host and they would be given an opportunity to speak during question period. So staff's recommendation with the rise of COVID cases is for the board to consider status quo, but also add on the implementation of the Zoom webinar. And if there's any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them.
Just anecdotally, I've participated on both sides of the webinar, both as a panel and in the webinar crowd, and it's pretty easy to navigate and deal with, so it's not terrible. I saw Dr. McNabb. Was there anyone else who had a comment? And Dr. Osborne.
Okay, am I on?
Yeah.
Okay. So in my mind, I really think if this is going to be the new standard, which basically, it appears that we're going to be wading through COVID at least for the fall and winter, we really need to make a concerted effort at trying to be more inclusive about our public engagement and, think outside of the box, look for opportunities to actually make this work, even if it's a bit painful, because we really are losing the contact with the public on a daily basis and on the meeting basis. So having somebody be able to present at a board meeting that's in person is far more effective than having somebody present at a online meeting that is not. So I really, really think that we need to dig deeper and provide more options to make this a better, longer term solution than it is today.
Thank you. Next up, I have Dr. Osborne and then Dr. Cote. Did I miss anyone else? Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Wendy, and to your staff for pulling together this report and presenting some different options. I think I share a lot of what Director McNabb has expressed in terms of views that we need to strive to add some more human contact at some of our meetings in the best way that we can. And I wanted to suggest that a kind of a gentle way to go into that would be to kind of re-examine whether the boardroom could be used for committee meetings like the EA directors, for example. There are 6 on that committee, and it might be a nice way for them to be able to start to come together in person with 1 or 2 staff people in the room. It's been about 6 weeks since the Tofino Council began to meet again in our council chamber, which is smaller than the ACRD boardroom, and the staff has managed to figure out a way for up to 10 people to be in it. But it does require wearing masks when we're moving around, and once we're seated, we're able to take them off, and working to kind of get that comfort back has been great. But as the chair of those meetings, I have just noticed the level of discourse has gone way up. We are able to communicate better with each other because we can see each other. And I think it's better decision-making processes because we're able to hear and listen to each other in a slightly different way. We have our staff rotating in and out to give delegations. So we're beginning to see our staff again. And I think that's really critical, that relationship between us as board directors and with you, the staff, is a really incredible thing to have. And it's been almost 6 months since we've been able to meet in person. So I too am hoping we can gently move back towards that. And I would also suggest that the West Coast Committee could meet in the Tofino Council chamber. We are all set up for the physically distanced and having the Zoom participation as well. And if that's something that's of interest, I know you know how to get a hold of Elise and can figure out how to give that a test run. So I will leave it there. And I maybe one last thing I want to add is just, I'm really looking forward to the strategic planning exercise, September 18th and 19th. I think coming together in person will really be a good thing for the board. Thank you.
Great. Okay, any further comments? I think I have Director Cote. Is there anyone else? And Director Haggard. Please go ahead, Director Cote.
Thank you. I really agree with the comments that have been said already, and find myself feeling quite dislocated, disconnected with the board and with staff, with only doing Zoom meetings. I have been into the office a couple of times and talked with a staff member here or there, and find that that does re-engage me into conversations regarding activity that's happening within our communities. I'd really like to see us start moving back to attempting to get to a normal where we can interface with each other. And I really miss that a lot. And like I said, I feel quite disengaged. The Zoom is much better than a teleconference, but it's still lacking something. That personal connection between directors is very important, and I think it's vital for us moving forward. I also look forward to our meeting at the Barclay to do strategic planning. I think that that's really important. And I think part of that meeting should be on how we are going to continue with personal interface meetings. And I know that staff are working on it. And at this time, with the increase of COVID cases, if people are, maybe there could be some directors that aren't comfortable with attending or in person, but we could allow for that. So I'm hoping that this will be the direction that we take for the future. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. Next up, I have Director Haggard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I got appointed to the board, a couple of my goals were to develop relationships with the people on the board and try and strengthen the ties between the city and the regional district. I think I only attended about 4 meetings and then the world kind of fell apart. So I haven't been able to achieve those goals yet. So I was really looking forward to meeting in person again to try and achieve those goals that I'd set for myself. But with the numbers going up in COVID, I'm really hesitant to go towards that direction. And I think adding the additional time, staff time that would be required to have in-person meetings might be very prohibitive because they have enough on their plate at this time. I would suggest that maybe we work towards maybe a hybrid type of meeting as well, what Wendy suggested. So that way the public can be engaged and they're not feeling so left out right now. And then continue with Zoom for the time being, because we can always change if the numbers start getting better. But I think for now, I'd like to leave it status quo, continue using the Zoom meetings. As much as I miss everybody and I want to see you in person, it just doesn't feel right to me at this time. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Are there any other comments? I think in terms of where I'm at, I'm in line with Director Haggard, although I do place a separation between our willingness to be in the same room together is different than public engagement. And I think those two things are separate in regards to what is most effective. Because at the moment, it does seem like if we were able to kind of create more technological opportunities for people to participate, we can reach as many or more people this way then, but that's separate from being in the same room together. So in the future, I think we should have a discussion about our willingness to sit in the same room together, but still have people participate electronically from outside of the board and staff, or go the other direction, like what the hybrid is. So that interaction between engagement with the public and connections with other fellow directors and staff, they're related, but I think we should keep them separate because most of our comments were about being together with one another, which is important and something we should focus on. But I think from a kind of democratic perspective, our duty will be first to public engagement, or should be. That being said, I think there are some good options or good opportunities that should be investigated for kind of moving into a hybrid model. I would suggest at this moment, though, until we can see kind of a good plan to the level of what Tofino has put together, we continue on with this, but we do ask that Douglas and Wendy work on opportunities, especially for committees which are smaller. And I don't know what that looks like as a motion, so I kind of, I don't know if we should change it to reflect that in some way, or if that can be taken as a directive that's understood. Nope, you're muted, Wendy. There you go.
Sorry. So sorry, you're asking if the motion could be changed to explore ways to possibly hold committee meetings, hybrid model, or I'm not sure what you're asking.
I think I would ask that staff be directed to investigate different arrangements of seating or tables in the board meeting to allow for more directors to attend and or staff.
Great, so we can add that to the motion that's presented if that works.
Yeah, and then the motion does include a mention of committees, does it not?
Yes. Yeah, it says board and committee meetings continue to be held via Zoom.
Okay. And I think what I'd like to do is perhaps give the chairs of committees the option to try to do physical meetings in various locations, whether it be the Tofino City Council or our boardroom or even somewhere else. I think given the size of committees and the ability of people to meet in other locations, maybe that's on the table too. I saw your hand up, Director McNabb. Please go ahead.
So, I mean, I really think we need to approach this in a little different light because we need to be prepared for the future. So we need to have a process that provides us with this interaction that we need into the future. So if this type of occurrence happens again, that we're ready for that. And so, I think we need to really not look at this as an isolated incident, but look at it as an opportunity to provide for situations like this in the future so that we've got a method that actually is effective to provide local government. So I mean, I'm disappointed that our both the city of Port Alberni and the regional district offices are not open. Every business in all our communities has had to invest in those type of things that would provide the protection to allow the business to be open, both for staff and customers. So, I think we're supposed to be leaders, and we should have been the first ones on the table to get this stuff right and get it going. So I think all we're doing is putting a Band-Aid on it, and I don't like that approach. I think we need to be digging deeper, working harder, and actually providing what we need to give good government in a bad situation. Thanks.
New building, Douglas. That's what that means. Okay. Douglas, I see your video is on. I assume it's because you wanted to speak.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to observe that the next board meeting's in 2 weeks, and I think that there's been a lot of good comments, in particular about having a 14-member board provides different space constraints that perhaps a 6-member committee might not. And so I think within the next 2 weeks, we could come back with some ideas about the committee meetings as well, if that's the satisfaction of the board. And perhaps that last, the third part, or the third resolution in 8A, be instructed to investigate using Zoom webinar, and ask staff to also address the earlier implementation of in-person committee meetings or something like that.
So add that to the third clause.
Yeah, and if that meets the board's satisfaction of coming back with some ideas about the committee meetings in 2 weeks, then we could separate the board meetings from the committee meetings somewhat to get some more in-person possibilities, both for the public and for the directors to meet together.
Okay, as long as we can get to a point where we're getting towards that. I think a discussion on staff interactions with the public as well, because I think that's a part, because we're only talking about meetings and people coming to meetings and listening and that sort of thing. But a lot of the services that we're providing as the regional district tend to be people coming in asking about zoning or that sort of thing too. And I think because of that choke point at the front door, there are considerations that make it difficult, but there might be things we can do. I'm just thinking of the weather shift, and waiting outside is not going to be tenable for a lot of what we do, but also a lot of what businesses are going to be doing as well. So that's something everyone has to deal with. So I'm not saying it's unique to us, but I do think that we should be responding to that continual, if this is the new normal, and thank you, Director McNabb, we should be doing something that makes sense rather than is a Band-Aid. So let's continue to make progress over time, and in 2 weeks, see what we have for committees, and maybe in a month or so, come back and see where we're at in regards to infections and that sort of thing too, because things could get worse, things could get better. I'm assuming they're going to stay at about the same rate, which means that we're going to need to really adapt to what today is going forward. And I think that brings us into, and I said it kind of facetiously, but maybe that does consider looking at new meeting space or something like that in the future. Director Osborne, please go ahead.
Thanks. Did you say, Doug, that the boardroom is now all wired for Zoom, etc.?
I'll ask Wendy to speak to that. It's being implemented as per the board direction. I'm not exactly sure exactly where we're at right now.
Yes, it's all ready to go. This was a directive before COVID hit to start live streaming our board meetings. So it's all set up. We did do a test run last week. So when I talked about a hybrid, was we could have, a couple directors, one staff, and a few public present, and they would be in person, but it would be Zoom. So that is one way of doing it. But it's challenging with our maximum of 8 for that room. I mean, we can look at other ways of making it a bit different to get 10 in, but most of our committees are
right. Okay. I don't know I can't remember when the next West Coast committee meeting is, but I do really want to urge us to consider having a West Coast committee meeting in the Tofino Council chambers that's all set up for this, so that staff and that committee members could kind of just test drive it and see what it feels like. And I just think there's a series of interim steps here where I absolutely appreciate we probably never get back to having 16 or 18 people in the boardroom all together. But I do strongly agree with what Director McNabb is saying, and I think we can move to the committee meetings and testing out that hybrid where the public still participate by Zoom. And I am anticipating we'll see that it's a little bit easier than perhaps we're thinking it is right now, and there's some growing comfort, and then we'll be able to see some other options moving forward. In talking with Doug earlier today, just about coming in from the West Coast, I mean, we haven't really talked about the the change that this Zoom technology has made, it's obviously reduced our travel expenses. It's made my life a lot easier in many ways. I don't have to drive 4 to 5 hours per meeting, which I really appreciate, but I am willing to trade that off by coming in to Fort Alberni, every so often, because I do really kind of crave that contact with my fellow directors. So I'll leave it at that. And thank you so much again for all this work.
Thank you. I have Directors Bodner and Roberts. I'm wondering if I missed anyone else. Nope. Okay, please go ahead, Director Bodner.
Yes, just a quick comment. If we're looking at other spaces, it wouldn't hurt to entertain the idea of the small room that's out of Cherry Creek Hall. And I think it would be able to accommodate distancing in that small room. And there's definitely the tables and the chairs there without having to go into a microphone. So just a thought.
Thank you. Director Roberts.
Through the chair to Director Osborne. Yeah, we did have a West Coast Committee meeting scheduled for tomorrow, which has been canceled. And the only thing I have in my calendar is October the 7th, potentially for the next one. So happy to hold it out there. Maybe things will have changed by then, but we'll wait and see. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, so with the additional intentions being expressed in an amended motion, are we willing to kind of go forward with that at the moment? Director Roberts?
According to what I've heard thus far, is the intent for this request for a decision to be deferred to 2 weeks to our next meeting on September the 9th?
I thought what we would do is we would have the that third part, the district staff instructed to investigate Zoom webinar or other electronic means for increased public participation. And then there would be a semicolon after that, and to investigate in-person options for committees. So just to make sure that, we're going to stick with the status quo for now, but we do have to move that into a place that is more akin to the new normal so that we're not continually just doing this as a Band-Aid. So we would continue with Zoom meetings for the board meetings, at least until the next board meeting. And then that will be after, ideally, after the West Coast Committee experience, so that staff can go and take a look at what's happening at the Tofino Council chambers and see, so that they can wrap, I think this is what you're saying, Director Osborne, wrap their minds and actually experience what's the arrangement is there, and that could help kickstart creativity in regards to what's going on with our meeting space. But at the moment, I do really think we should include the Zoom webinar or other means to increase public participation. So I'd like to make sure that that's in there for sure.
If I could just note as well that as part of the minister's order, we do need to pass, if we're not doing in person right now, we do need to pass the second paragraph as well, just saying how, in the interest of openness and fairness, how we're doing our meetings. So we need that one as well to continue on.
Okay.
Doing what we're doing.
Well, the way we're going, we can do all three as long as that additional on the end is done. And then what we may do is update what that looks like once we have a better handle on what the realistic options are, and then what we can build up over time.
Yeah, and we'll do some more investigating on that option of committee meetings in person or hybrid for sure.
Yeah. So what I'd like in those 2 weeks as well is what are the realistic timelines of us being able to meet in person, because that really seems to matter to the non-introverted directors on the board, and the and to go from there. So I think what folks would like to see on that end is what are the SMART goals? What are the realistic, measurable things that we can attain in the next 4 weeks or 6 weeks? So as long as that's well understood, I think everyone should be comfortable. I don't know. Okay. Do we have a mover for that particular conversation, I suppose? Director Cote?
I'll make a motion.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Okay, going back to the item. So we are now on
Mr. Chair?
Oh, please go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to take the opportunity to say that we are very gradually going to experiment with inviting members of the public in starting Monday. We sent an email out that you wouldn't have had an opportunity to read quite yet because it just went out a short time ago. But we're going to, if members of the public feel they would be better served by coming into the office, we've created some protocols for that, and we'll learn from that, and we will continue to offer all of our services the way we have been in these last few months, remotely, by email, by Zoom call, things like that. So we'll add this to the mix and see how well we do, how effective it is, and what course correction needs to be done, if any, as we go along, and as we watch the pandemic numbers throughout the provinces, et cetera, as we all are. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so I'm getting kicked out for the next item, so I'm totally going to watch on YouTube. But I'm just going to say the reason I'm removing myself is because I'm a named director on the board of Humes Ventures, which is in the agenda, which is wholly owned by the nation, but because it's a board and I'm a director, I think the conflict of interest rules are pretty clear. So Janice, kick me off whenever you like, and I'll come back.
He's gone. Okay, thanks. All right, so this request for decision, just like our chair said, is around the proposed transfer of tree farm license 44. And Heather.
Thanks. Okay, so the report is before you regarding the transfer of tree farm license 44. As part of the minister's decision, they need to consider public input as well as local government input. So this is the board's chance to provide input on this transfer. The reason I put this report on today's agenda was because the province had initially indicated that they needed a response by the end of August, but that timeline has been extended a bit. September 9th is our next board meeting, and a member from Western Forest Products and a member from the Huu-ay-aht First Nations are going to be a delegation at that meeting. So they are going to be speaking about this TFL transfer. So the board may wish to delay making the recommendation presented, or they can make the recommendation today as presented, but there's no harm in delaying this recommendation for 2 weeks.
Thanks very much, Heather. Director McNabb.
So I would wholeheartedly make the recommendation that is on our script here. I think that the day that this TFL becomes a large part of the ownership becomes absolutely local and always will stay local is a great day. The issues that we've suffered over the decades of forest companies coming and going has really been a total detriment to the community. Vested interest that remains in the regional district, in our community. The attitude of the Huu-ay-aht to be looking at producing product out of what they're logging locally is awesome, and I really think it's totally productive for our regional district and our community. So I just applaud this in every way. Thanks.
Thank you, Director McNabb. Are there any other comments? I think given the opportunity to defer it for a couple of weeks, knowing that somebody is coming, I think that would probably be better process. I'm sure a lot of board directors are going to agree with Director McNabb's comment, but Director Haggard?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to say, talking to different people in the forestry industry, they all perceive this as a really good move for our community. So I support the motion as well. I don't think anybody on the board will not support the motion. But if you're recommending that we refer it till we hear from the participants, I'm fine with that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I would suggest we just postpone this until the next meeting, and then we'll just, if this is possible in our procedures, we'll just consider the recommendation right after the delegation. So in that case, somebody
Chair
a motion?
Osborne.
Yes,
Chair Osborne.
I can hear you.
Chair Osborne. It's Bob Beckett.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I applaud and support the Hawaiian Nation for their vision and for their initiative regarding economic development, and would very much like to hear how this transfer will impact and benefit our community. I also concur with Director McNabb. However, I feel that for transparency purposes and for process purposes, we should defer this until we can hear from the participants in the public presentation.
Thank you. So I think Director Beckett just made a motion to postpone this item to the next board meeting.
Second that motion.
Thank you. There's a seconder. All in favor? Any opposed? None. All right, carried. Back to, we'll get Chair Jack back in there. I'm also just wondering, is it possible to not have the agenda showing on the screen share all the time? I don't know about you guys, but I'm just struggling keeping my Zoom going. And I'm just wondering if it's nicer for the public watching on the YouTube channel to be able to see us all.
I really like
yes, that is an option. It's up to the board. We can share it or we don't have to share it. The agendas are available on our website.
Is anybody? Go ahead, John.
It was totally creeping on YouTube, and all it was just the agenda, and I would see the speaker's face in a tiny inset. So from a quality perspective, I would suggest that we just don't share the screen and just have our faces up. It's probably better. Because I drag the shared screen way to the left to get everyone's faces anyway. So I think it's probably more effective. And there we go. Okay. Sorry. That brings us to item C, which is an item request for decision regarding emergency medical responder medical oversight for Bamfield Volunteer Fire Department. And Iridia, I think is how you pronounce it.
That's correct.
All right, thanks, Mr. Stair. Please go ahead.
Yeah, this is something that all of the other local fire departments already have in place and have had for many years. Iridia provides the oversight, which gives feedback for things like AED use and provides some training and as a go-between with emergency health services. So very beneficial to the departments.
I'm sorry, I thought you were going to speak longer. Okay, we do have a motion here, but are there any comments or questions? Director Beckett, I see you've unmuted.
Yes, no, I was going to make the motion that the Burning Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors enters into an agreement for the provision of emergency medical responder medical direction to the Bamfield Volunteer Fire Department with Iridia Medical, Inc.
Second.
Thank you, Director McNabb. So that first and second, are there any other comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. All right. Thank you, Charlie. All right, that brings us to, the next item is for the Sprout Lake Volunteer Fire Department, the Great Central Lake Dry Fire Hydrant Contract. I assume this is you again?
No,
No? Is it?
I missed one.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did. Fire Protection Services Agreement for the Hoop Hatchet and Sprout Lake Volunteer Fire Department. My apologies. Please go ahead.
Yeah, this agreement actually came up late, so we haven't had a lot of time to work with this. We're asking for an interim agreement to go to the end of December, so we have time to review this with Hoop-Hatchet and Sprout Lake Volunteer Fire Department. We're not anticipating any changes other than the Hoop-Hatchet would like to incorporate their bylaws into this agreement, and nothing major that's going to change anything there. They have implemented a nuisance bylaw, which has some fire type things in it as far as fire size and what they can burn and that sort of thing. So it goes along with what we've already practiced in the rest of the district.
Okay, Director Cote.
Thank you. So I would move that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors authorize the Chief Administrative Officer to enter into an interim fire protection service agreement until December 31st, 2020 with the Hoop-Hatchet First Nation, allowing the Sprout Lake Volunteer Fire Department to provide structural fire protection service to Clecoot Indian Reservation number 2, with any long-term changes to the agreement being brought back to the ACRD Board of Directors.
Second.
Thank you, Director McNabb. Okay, are there any further comments? Go ahead, Director Cote.
So will this be coming back to the board again then in December for an extension?
Yes, we would expect that it would come back with a revised document that included the bylaws that the Hoop-Hatchet wants and some other small changes.
Thank you.
Okay, with that in mind, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you very much. And now to the Sprout Lake Volunteer Fire Department Great Central Lake Dry Fire Hydrant Contract.
Yeah, Sprout Lake Fire Department has a site next to the regional boat ramp that they would like to install a dry hydrant which would provide water from Sprout Lake, easier access than putting a pump in the water at the time of an incident. They have an agreement with the the contractor that's working nearby there to provide the installation, Great Central Lake Holdings actually, to provide the installation free of charge.
Okay. Director Cote and then Director Roberts.
Thank you. So I'd like to make the motion that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors award the contract for the placement of the Sprout Lake Volunteer Fire Department Great Central Lake Fire Hydrant, dry fire hydrant to Great Central Lake Holding Limited for the quoted price of $0.
All right. Thank you, Director Cote. And Director Roberts, did you second that there?
Well, I had a question, and I would second that, yes. Okay. But the question is this for drafting purposes to supply water?
Yes, this will be for drafting purposes. No other hydrants in there. It just gives them a in-place drafting.
Thank you for that.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? Director McNabb.
So just on a procedural basis, is a contract at $0? Does it not have to be $1?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, I might be wrong, but that's just what I've always thought.
Director McNabb, I think you were right about that. We'll button that up. Thank you.
There was a $1 transfer at the Monmouth final agreement that had to be made in order for the treaty to go through. There had to be some kind of symbolic motion of actual money. So I think you're quite right, Director McNabb. Okay, Director Cote.
So I will change my motion to include $1.
Director Roberts, is that okay?
Yeah, I would say $2, but that's fine.
Ooh, no. Okay, so we'll just make it as if it was for the $1.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay. With that in mind, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Great. Okay, that brings us to the item F, which is the, oh, and thank you, Charlie. The Alberni Valley Regional Airport lease renewal for Northern Lights Aviation.
Can you hear me, Jack?
Yep.
Okay. This is just a lease agreement for the Northern Lights Aviation limit. They've been a tenant since 2007, and we're just looking to renew their agreement.
Okay. So are there any comments or questions or motions? Director Cote and then Director McNabb.
I was just going to make the motion.
Okay.
Okay.
Do we have a seconder? All right, Director Reimer, thank you. And Director McNabb, did you have any comments?
Yes, I did. Just with regards to the water system there. So is there some kind of a hookup fee or a proviso for or participation in that water system out there, or how do they handle that?
Yes, everyone at the AVRA is on the water system, and I believe you pay for a water connection fee. And I actually have to check into that, whether we bill them separately or if it's included in the lease amounts every year to pay for their portion of the water system.
Any further comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay. That brings us to item G, which is an amendment to the lease lot number 16 for the Alberni Valley Regional Airport. Please go ahead.
So SRM Restoration we had originally taken this to the board, and they were going to lease lot 16 and lot 9, but they've decided only to lease lot 16. So we've made an amendment and we're requesting support.
The motion is on the following page.
Make that motion.
All right, thank you, Director Cote. Do we have a seconder?
That.
Director Haggard, thank you. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. That brings us to item H, which is the City of Port Alberni collection of a 3-stream waste service.
So earlier this month, our organics coordinator did a presentation to the ABB and City Council to discuss moving forward with phase 1 of organics diversion. So that's bringing the City of Port Alberni on board, and then just looking at what that looks like logistically. Well, we're meeting on a staff level now with the city and the regional district, and we're really delving into this. So we provided some options. Option 1 is to have the city do 3-stream collection of organics, recycling, and waste. And option 2 would have the city do waste and organics, and the regional district would continue with recycling. So when you look at all the options, really option 1 provides the most benefits for efficiency, lowest greenhouse gases, lowest cost overall. And the city really has been doing a very good job with their automated system, which is an extremely safe and productive system. So staff are recommending that the board of directors support option 1. As well, city staff will be taking a report on September 14th, I believe, to get support from the city council. And once we have that, we're going to start moving forward with an RFP for carts and the strategic communication plan on those portions.
Sorry, you said carts?
Yes, so because we have automated garbage carts, we'll need to purchase ones for recycling as well as organics. And we need to know how many to buy, and we'll be doing that all at once to get the best cost.
Okay, thank you. I saw Director Reimer and Director Roberts. Yeah. Go ahead, Director Reimer.
Oh, sorry for my complete ignorance. Where are the organics actually going? And is it being turned into compost? I kind of missed that in your information.
Yeah, so the organics are going to be brought to a local processing facility. There is one locally that is sort of on your way up to Bamfield, just on that outskirts of town. There's also a facility that exists in Nanaimo that has capacity. So we will be issuing, again, an RFP to get quotes for what it's going to cost, and then we will select the most successful proponent. And it will be turned into compost, which we can use.
Okay, thank you. So before we have that in place, we're buying the carts.
Yes, mostly because, well, actually those RFPs will be going out mostly simultaneously. We're hoping to get it rolling in the spring. So the sooner we can get these out, carts actually might take longer than anything because with COVID, we expect delays. So we're hoping that it'll be within a 6-month window. So we're just trying to get that out as soon as possible. Once we get actually schedules back on that, that'll probably indicate when we can actually get the program implemented.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the RDN had to stagger their distribution of the carts around now. So not everyone's received them yet. So that is realistic. So, okay. Dr. Roberts?
Yeah, just a comment to Mrs. Brunn. As you just mentioned, I'm involved. Well, not involved. I'm in the RDN, and we received our carts. And I read the report that was submitted, and I fully concur with it. It's an excellent opportunity to expedite the removal of garbage and recycling and so on and so forth. So, yeah, we received our carts, and I think it starts on October the 1st. Anyway, thanks for the good work. Much appreciated.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any other comments? Dr. Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. I fully support this for the city of Port Alberni moving forward. But on page 107, I believe it is, it talks about one of the points is phase 1 will act as a pilot project for phase 3 implementation using success and data measures to support the implementation of similar waste service for the AV and Banfield areas. So as much as I support this for the city of Port Alberni, I'm not going to be recognizing this as a pilot project that will be automatically adopted to the rural areas, mainly Sprout Lake, without further consultation. I don't know that the purchase of these bins is what the rural areas want to do and how they want to recycle and do the organics and garbage collection. Right now, the regional district, most areas besides Beaver Creek and maybe parts of Cherry Creek are not having garbage collection through the regional district. It's on a personal basis. So I think there's much more consultation that needs to go on before we assume that this is a pilot project for the rural areas. But I do support this for the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cote. If I may, you raise a very excellent point, and I apologize. I think that was very assumptive in the report and not accurate. We've set the Alberni Valley and Banfield as phase 3 because we do have a lot of work to do to decide what's going to happen for the Alberni Valley. We need to talk to the public, see where the baseline is right now, provide them more information, do engagement. As we start our engagement for the city, we will be building the engagement for the Alberni Valley. But again, it's our third priority. I 100% agree. We need to have people on board. It's a new service. They have to agree for that if we move forward with collection for them. However, we do want to word the RFP so that we have the option to purchase bins for that phase if we move forward, but it's just going to be for costing purposes for the future if we proceed.
Okay. All right, Director McNabb, you had your hand up.
So one of the things that we've got to consider as far as the regional district or the regional areas is that our local landfill at some point won't be accepting organics from anywhere. And so if the rural areas can find a plan that works outside of of what is this plan is, then good on it. But the idea of all of this is to remove organics from our landfill and make sure that we're not have to go to gas extraction, as well as extending the life of the landfill. So, you know, I agree with, you know, Director Cote's sort of take on it in a way, but the reality will be that we're going to have to find a route around this, whether it's collection or it's self processing. This stuff's not going to go in the landfill. Thanks.
Thank you for that. That's that goes back to the very beginning of the landfill discussions we've been having, so it's a good reminder. Okay, we do have a motion that has been moved and seconded. We do understand that there is process involved in regards to the new service and that sort of thing. Are there any other comments? All right, seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to item I, which is the tipping fee for mattresses on the West Coast Trail, or West Coast Trail, my apologies, West Coast Landfill. Mattresses on the West Coast Trail. Nice, okay. All right, so please go ahead.
So far we haven't had to collect mattresses off the West Coast Trail, luckily. But we are looking to charge tipping fees for the West Coast landfill. We have Recycle Matters, which is started up in Port Alberni. They're processing mattresses and have been for the last year. They're very successful at that. We've been setting them aside at the Alberni Valley landfill, and now we want to expand that to the West Coast landfill. We're setting the price the same at $20 per mattress and box spring, and the company Recycle Matters will be transporting them back for us at that price. So there's no cost to the regional district. It is a user pay fee.
I saw Director Reimer, then Director Osborne, then Director Roberts.
Just curious, so currently there's no fee and this will be the fee that's implemented then?
Currently, the mattresses were going into the landfill, so now we're going to be diverting them.
So it will be a lower charge because the charge per ton would be less?
Well, it depended what you brought, and you were charged $130 per ton, and now you're charged per unit.
Right, so it will be more.
It will be more.
Okay, I just want to understand. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Director Osborne is next.
Thanks. This is great. And thank you so much. I think this is a much needed service on the West Coast. And I don't think that's going to be a big issue for many people to be able to pay that, to make sure it's diverted safely. I just wanted to touch on the very last line around working with the commercial market and the wintertime, often wintertime replacement of mattresses en masse. How do you expect to approach that with the resort community? How can I help, or how can our staff help?
Well, originally I was going to write a report that was going to recommend a higher price to the commercial businesses, but we needed to delay the next we were going to have a West Coast committee. It's been canceled. So I just didn't want to delay putting this fee in because we don't want this to delay by a few months, which it will be. And yeah, so we will be bringing a discussion point to the West Coast committee, because that is a very big difference to charge more money for commercial and a different rate than what we're charging for residential mattresses and box springs. So expect at the October West Coast committee that we will be talking about the commercial resort mattresses.
Okay, so right now this is just for single family home or residential drop off?
It'll be for any mattress that comes for now. Okay. So whether you're from a resort or whatever, but we feel that we could provide a better disincentive with a higher rate for commercial, considering they bring an entire load of mattresses up at once. They could also just put the used mattresses in there, and then we don't have those transportation costs that we're incurring.
I get it. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. I think Director Roberts is next.
I think it's all been covered. Thank you for that. I'd much rather see them being recycled and paying a small fee than ending up on the West Main for squatters. Thank you.
Is there anyone else
One more
before we get back to Director Osborne? Okay, Director Osborne. Go ahead.
Just curious.
You kind of cut out. You might need to say it again.
When will this program start?
We've made it effective September 1st.
Oh.
If it's passed.
That early, that's great. Okay. Kat. Okay, so we do have a motion here. Oh, we have a lot of motions. So, would anyone like to start? Director.
Sure.
Oh, okay, Director Osborne, go ahead.
I'll move that the ACRD Board of Directors give first reading to bylaw R1033-1, West Coast Landfill Tipping Fee and Regulation Amendment 2020.
Director Roberts, would you like to second? Yeah. Okay. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay.
I'll move second reading.
Do we have a seconder?
Second.
Oh, thank you, Director Johnson. Director Bodnar, did you have a question, or were you? You're muted. You're muted. You're muted. Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask if the West Coast is paying $20 for a mattress and Port Alberni's paying $20 for a mattress, so where are those mattresses then being brought to Port Alberni? And if so, who's paying for the transportation and the staff to do that?
Yes, so excellent question. In Port Alberni, when we originally started, the mattress recycles had proposed a rate of $15 per mattress. And then we added on the collection because we were originally hauling them, now they're hauling them, which was an additional $3 per mattress. So we actually are charged $18 per mattress. And so we have a $2 buffer that we collect as administration or that might disappear as the price goes up. However, Recycle Matters has negotiated a price of $20, even though it's probably going to cost them on average more than that. They're just reducing their costs because they want to make sure that they're getting all of the mattresses from the ACRD, which they work within. So in order to keep those prices consistent, we've just negotiated that rate. So we're working with them as best as possible. We do not have any buffer or additional cost coming in to us. It is $20 in and $20 out, even though we probably do have some administration costs associated with that, but we're just going to absorb it so we can maintain same fees at both landfills.
So they pay for the transportation and the staffing. Thank you.
Okay. Any further comments? This is second reading. It's been moved and seconded. Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Okay.
I'll move third
reading. Okay, and do we have a second? Thank you, Director Johnson. Comments? Okay, all those in favor? Motion carried. And
I'll move adopt.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, that brings us to 9.1, or planning matters. This is for electoral area directors only. The first one is item A, DVD 20,005, Colson Place, Sprout Lake. Alex?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. So this first application is a development variance application for property at 10067 Colson Place. This will reduce the side yard setback from 15 feet to 5 feet to accommodate an addition to an existing house and accessory building. The APC met on this application on Monday and supported it. Happy to answer any questions.
Sorry. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Director Cote.
Thank you. I'll make the motion that the Board of Directors consider issuing development variance permit DVD 20005, subject to neighboring properties being notified as per Local Government Act 499.
Thank you. And Director McNabb, seconding or a question? Second? Okay. Okay. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, next item is item B, which is also Sprout Lake, RD 2004 roads. I'm not going to pronounce that. Lot 3 Central Lake.
Thank you. This is a rezoning application for the Sprout Lake area. As Chair Jack has noted, it is a 14-acre property located on Central Lake Road. The acreage cottage residential district would allow for 1 single-family dwelling and up to 4 small cottages intended for short-term rental. The APC supported this application as well. I just wanted to highlight that as a condition of rezoning approval, planning staff are recommending that the applicant provide professional assurances that confirm there's adequate groundwater and on-site sewage disposal capacity to service that development. Thank you.
Okay, there's quite a suite of motions here, so please do not hesitate. Director Cote.
Okay, thank you. Could we change that from just 4 cottages to 4 cottages and the family accommodation that they talked about? So there's 5 buildings.
So the zone allows for a house in addition to 4 cottages. So it allows for the 5 dwellings on the property. The house is what they intend to live in, and then they intend to build the smaller cottages as they go. So their intention is the house in 4.
Okay, just confirmation that adequate water for, it only says for 4 cottages, so.
Oh, I see. Yes, absolutely. We can confirm that we have capacity to service 5 dwellings. Absolutely.
Okay, so 5 dwellings. So with that slight change, I would like to make a motion that bylaw P1408, Regional District of Alberni, Clayoquot zoning text amendment be read a first time.
Second that.
Thank you, Director Reimer. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. And then the Atlas amendment, first time?
So I'll move that bylaw P1409, Regional District of Alberni, Clayoquot Regional Zoning Atlas Amendment be read for first time.
Thank you.
Second that.
Thank you, Director Reimer. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried.
I'll move that the public hearing for bylaws P1408 and P1409 be delegated to the Director of the Electoral Area D or the alternate director or chairperson of the regional district.
Second that.
And seconded by Director Reimer. Comments? Seeing none, all... Oh, Director Cote, you had a comment? Or were you... Oh, you're voting. Okay, all those in favor? Motion carried. Okay. And then adoption.
Finally, I will move that the Board of Directors confirm that adoption of bylaws P1408 and P1409 is subject to the applicant agreeing to a covenant preventing future subdivision, confirmation of adequate water for 5 dwellings, confirmation of suitable suites for sewage sites for sewage disposal, and meeting technical referral agency requirements.
Second the motion.
Thank you. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, that brings us to item C, which is a temporary use permit for 8467 Bothwell Road, Sprout Lake.
Just a reminder about my conflict on this one.
Kick you out, Janice? I gotta turn participants on to make sure. I believe we're good now. Okay, let's continue. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So this is a temporary use permit application for a short-term rental at Sprout Lake. Neighboring residents and property owners within 100 meters have been notified. We have received 2 letters of correspondence relating to this application. The letters are provided as late items, just as a reminder in your agenda under 9.1C. I just wanted to highlight one of the concerns that was raised in a letter was moorage for renters' boats. At the APC meeting, the applicant pointed out that they intend to prohibit renters from bringing their own personal watercrafts as part of the short-term rental accommodation. If the board wishes to add that as a condition of the temporary use permit, that no personal watercrafts may be brought to the property, the board can add that into the resolution if it so desires. Thank you.
Okay. Director Cote, please go ahead if you want.
Thank you. It was my understanding that the short-term vacation rentals did already identify that only one boat was allowed to come with a rental?
The policy states that, yes, correct.
So the request is that there be no boats?
That was one of the concerns raised by the neighbor that had previous issues with renters' boats on that property.
This is new news, so I don't see a problem with one boat, multiple, and if the bylaw states that there's only one allowed, then I'd like to make the motion.
I think
okay,
The motion to issue?
I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Directors issue temporary use permit TUP 19018.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Reimer. Any further comment? Director McNabb.
So in the interest of settling the neighbors on this particular application, which appears that it's been operating without license or without permit prior to this, I mean, our bylaw enforcement will soon be available for ticketing. So they said that there was no action by the regional district in the past, but maybe staff could advise them that that's going to change very shortly here. So
Yeah, I think that's fair. Director Reimer, go ahead.
I think the issue is just, as I read it, where they were mooring the boat, that there were 2 docks and one side of the dock was on their property. So, I mean, in my mind, that's up to the property owner to make sure whoever's mooring their boat understands where to put it to do with the property lines.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. I was going to say that you can't vote, Director Haggard, but you're just having chips. So okay, so that brings us to the next item, which is also a temporary use permit for Sprout Lake.
Thank you. Yes, this is a same thing, temporary use permit for short-term rental on Dixon Drive. Neighboring residents and property owners have been notified. We've also received one letter of correspondence relating to this application, so I want to highlight that on your agenda. The revised agenda under 9.1D. The letter is generally opposed to short-term rentals in the area, but I just wanted to point out that the issues with the specific rental that are cited in this letter relates to a different property than the house that's under consideration in this permit. We've not received any complaints about any about the short-term rental use at 8279 Dixon Drive, and the conditions of use in the temporary use permit provide the regional district with a tool that will help us regulate the operation of the rental. Then the other thing I just wanted to highlight that the applicant has provided the regional district with a revised letter from their registered on-site wastewater practitioner that confirms that their septic system is in good working order and that it is capable of accommodating the 2-bedroom residence as it currently exists. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any, what is the wishes? Dr. Cote.
Thank you. This was approved by our ACP. So I'd like to move that the Board of Directors issue temporary use permit TUP 19020.
Thank you. Director Reimer, second. Okay, any further comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, that brings us to item E. Looks like Lamarck Road, Beaver Creek. Go ahead, Alex.
So this one is a rezoning application at 6261 Lamarck Road. All conditions of rezoning have now been satisfied, and staff are recommending that the board adopt the bylaw at this time. Thank you.
Thanks. Director McNabb.
So I would move that bylaw. Sorry, I'm reading it off my iPhone. It's kind of small. The bylaw P1404 Regional District of Alberni Clayoquot Zoning Atlas Amendment bylaw be adopted.
Thank you. And seconded by Director Reimer. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, item F is a rezoning application with only the one. Go ahead, Alex. Sorry.
Yes, thank you. So this is a rezoning application that's at the same stage. It's at 6765 Beaver Creek Road. The conditions of rezoning have now been satisfied, and again, staff are recommending that the board now adopt the bylaw.
Go ahead.
So could I just ask a question? I wasn't here the last meeting. There was some discussion with the staff with regards to the biological assessment on the biologist assessment on the creek. So has that been solved or settled, or?
So just to give a bit of background here, we do have a creek that is showing on our mapping, but the applicants have received a report from a biologist that confirms it is not a natural water course, but in fact a man-made drainage course. There was some issues with that at the that were raised at the public hearing, and we had committed to looking into that through the development permit process and the subdivision review process that would follow this rezoning application.
Okay, I would move that the bylaw P1407 Regional District of Alberni Clayoquot Zoning Atlas Amendment bylaw be adopted.
Thank you. Do you have a second? Thank you, Director Reimer. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, so that brings us to planning matters for all directors. And item 9.2A is an addition to treaty lands or settlement lands.
Yeah, so this one is a referral from the province for the conversion of an existing crown lease in the Tocourt Bay Dryland Sort area to the Tocourt Nation Treaty Settlement lands. So staff are recommending that the board support the addition to treaty lands, and we're happy to answer any question.
Director McNabb.
So if it's appropriate, I would move the motion that the board of directors direct staff to notify the, sorry, as I said, I'm reading this from my iPhone, it's a little small, the Ministry of Forest Lands and Natural Resources and Rural Development that the ACRD supports Tocourt First Nation fee simple disposition for Lot A, District Lot 2219, Clayoquot District, resulting in an addition to treaty settlement lands.
And I second that.
Okay. I only had one question. Are these your pre-approved lands or are they different? You don't have to answer. That's more mono. Sorry. I think they're pre-approved. Okay. Because we're looking at doing the same thing for Hue. We haven't started yet. Okay. Any further comments? Saying none. All those in favor? All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, so that brings us to the next item. Please go ahead, Alex.
Thank you very much. So the next item's the same thing actually, and it is a request from the province to support the conversion of an existing Crown lands in the Stopper Islands area of Barkley Sound to Toquot Nation Treaty Settlement lands. This was in fact part of their pre-approved lands. I believe the Toquot Bay Dryland Storage Area was a part of the discussions around the remediation of the former campground. So again, staff are recommending here that the board support the addition to treaty lands. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Roberts.
Just a question through the chair. With the addition of these islands, does that restrict access to any other persons, or do they have to have permission from the Toquot Nation to go there? Director Johnson.
I believe currently they need permission because it's in the Barkley Community Forest area right now.
Right.
So this is something that I can kind of weigh in on. I do know that anything that falls under TSL tends to fall under the lawmaking authority of the nation. So it'd probably be subject to their zoning or land use laws. That being said, if it is already kind of put into a community forest, whatever rules govern that community forest as it's set up by the province would probably still apply. Any further comments or questions? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? Or sorry,
Oh, no.
Was there a second? I didn't write down a second. I'm sorry. Okay, Director Osborne. Okay, thank you. Okay, now any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Alrighty, I think that brings us to item C, which is the agricultural plant implementation project.
Thank you. So we have a report in front of you providing the progress of our ongoing agricultural plan initiatives in 2020, led by the Agricultural Development Committee, the Coastal Agricultural Roundtable, and our agricultural support team. In my view, the program's been very successful this year. We're happy with it in connecting organizations involved in food security and promoting Grow Local, especially during COVID-19. And then we've also had some success in supporting larger projects, such as the regulatory change that now allows for small scale on-farm slaughter in our region, and the Alberni Cedar Forest food processing hub as well. So next steps in 2020 for the rest of the year here, there are a number of grant supported projects that are underway or are about to launch. One is a regional council for agricultural water supply that we're looking to get started. That's a 2-year project. And then we also have some food project development, food policy education, and emergency planning in the coastal communities, and then continued support for COVID-19 recovery in our region. More details provided in the report, and happy to answer any questions about it.
Haley, are you listening to Uncle Jordan?
Someone's Uncle Jordan may need to mute. Director Cote, please.
Thanks. I'd just like to make the motion that the Board of Directors receive the memorandum. Receive the report. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Cote. Seconded by Director McNabb. I had a question, actually, and I just forgot what it was. I'll just email later. Okay. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, that brings us to item D, which is the provincial news release regarding ALC fees, soil removal, and placement of fill in the ALR. Okay.
Sure, this is the last one we have in front of you. The province has announced some changes to the ALC regulations coming into effect September 30th, primarily affecting us. The fee structure is changing, which will allow, which will provide a greater proportion of the application fees for local governments. The ACRD currently receives $300 from ALR applications, and the change would result in the regional district portion ranging from $450 to $750 depending on the type of application. There's also some changes relating to soil removal and fill for agricultural roads and remediation orders from the Land Commission. So the news release is provided there for you with a bit of a backgrounder. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, any further comments? Oh, that's the memorandum.
We'll move the board of directors to receive the memorandum.
Thank you, Director Reimer. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director McNabb. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, that brings us to reports. Would anyone like to bring it or pull anything out? I know I would, but I'll wait for everyone else. Director
Just a
Reimer.
reminder, Mr. Chair, that item C is a verbal report.
Oh, yes, my apologies, Heather. But Director Reimer?
I just wanted to, well, there is another verbal report in there, but on 3rd Avenue. So I was one of the people doing surveys out at the landfill of people dropping off recycling, garbage. That surveyed about 1,100 people. And I can say that our communication about what's been going on at 3rd Avenue has been pretty poor. There's been a lot of rumors that it's being closed down, that people really want it back and don't know what's going on there. So I would say if we could communicate fairly soon on what the timeline is for reopening, that would go a long way for the public understanding what we're doing and why we're doing it. Because like I said, it's not been clear.
Thank you.
Okay. So that was an item I was going to bring up. Was there anyone else? Director Cote?
Thanks. Just also about the recycle, I'm really happy to see us moving towards opening it up. I've had comments from senior residents from Sprout Lake that said that the recycling at the landfill is not appropriate for seniors because they have to distribute the stuff over their head, and there's no assistance because of COVID out at the landfill. So a lot of recycling has been going into the garbage. So really happy to see this opening. Thanks.
Okay. So before we get to the verbal reports with Heather and Jenny, I just had a question. What are the expectations in regards to hearing back from the province in regards to the hole in the wall and the traffic considerations? I know that you did a 2 or 3 pager, Douglas. Do you get a sense that we'll be hearing back sooner or later? Or is this like wait until March to see if we get something in April kind of conversation?
Mr. Chair, we haven't engaged the province with respect to hole in the wall. The information report that is a little bit lower in the agenda is asking that the board considers its role in this development, in the development of this amenity, if they want to pursue a role. So the Mosaic is interested in talking about it. If we want to, that is of course far from a commitment, but it would take resources, it would take agreements. The traffic flow is an issue there as well, et cetera. So I think the board has to contemplate if it wants to take this on and put resources towards it, including for the exploration of what is possible.
Yeah, I think my only consideration there was just seeing the traffic, and I don't know if that's more of a provincial highways thing or if we should weigh in. I saw Director Cote and then Director McNabb.
Thank you. I see hole in the wall as being part of, or could be a part of, the regional district parks complement. I think that it's very well known place for people to go, tourist attraction, and I'd like to see us take a role in moving this forward at some point, if it's not now, but soon. I agree, it is a huge safety issue for people trying to get in there. I know I've just about hit somebody myself going past there, so quite concerning. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Okay, Director McNabb and then Director Bodnar.
So my sort of thinking on this is I really think we need to know what we're getting into before we get into it. I don't know how we would do it, but I would like to see us have a risk assessment on the site as well as the access egress to the site. That's a shale wall that was mined to create a pipeline through back in the 20s or something like that. And I mean that I'm not a geologist, but shale is not a very stable product. And so I really think we need to know the potentials of this site as far as risk is concerned before we commit to actually doing it. And I'm not sure how that actually happens, but that would be my comment.
Thank you. I have Director Bodnar and then Director Haggard.
Yes, I use that road a lot that people are parking on because I belong to the Black Powder Club, which uses that road. And we have a lease with Mosaic down about a 10-minute drive from there. And beside, you know, I feel sorry for the people who think they're just take it for granted there's going to be a place to park, because their traffic is really a big concern on that road, never mind anywhere around there. And people from out of town have no idea about it because their GPS tells that this is where you go. So I don't think the hole in the wall is going to go away. It's being advertised in tourist magazines around the world. That's what they're telling me at the tourist bureau. So I think it's worth investigating to see what if we can do anything about it at this time. It's not going to go away for a while. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Directors Haggard and then Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the community would really like to see the hole in the wall developed. So it already is a tourist attraction, but really make it into something that would be a little bit more attractive for people to visit. However, it would be a huge undertaking, but I'm certainly open to having us explore what exactly would be involved and what the cost would be and what the process would be, because at this time it's just too big that I can't even imagine what it would look like, but I'm certainly open to us exploring it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. It sounds like we're going in the direction of maybe having a discussion about setting up a plan to look into it officially, like in strategic planning or something like that. Director Roberts?
Yeah, thanks for that. I firmly believe that we need to do some more research into this, a longer term plan. I think potentially we should look at perhaps putting up signs or a sign up there, no parking, and referring to the part of the report was that they were allowing free parking at the tourist information booth. So maybe something to that effect could be in there. I don't know if it's possible or not, but it does get to be pretty tricky when you're coming around the corner and people are backing out or pulling out or whatever. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Pulling out with not a lot of power either. Okay, so thank you for writing the report. I think this is something we'll return to in the near future, Douglas. So I'll see if we can have a discussion integrated with other, maybe even regional parks approaches, because I think Director Cote's suggestion was a really good one in regards to how that looks. So stay tuned, I guess. But thank you. Okay, sorry to keep you waiting, Heather, but please go ahead with your report on the updates in regards to emergency ops.
Thank you. So I'm just going to give a brief update on our Emergency Operations Center. First, I'm just going to start a little more provincially. Cases are increasing across the province. However, our health authority is faring better in terms of case numbers than other health authorities. Today, the province announced that there's 62 more new cases, including 2 additional cases in the Vancouver Island Health Authority, for a total of 17 active cases on Vancouver Island. VHA has also identified 3 COVID exposures. 2 were in Sydney and 1 was in Courtenay. So the public was advised if they visited those locations during that time frame, they need to monitor themselves for for symptoms. I just want to remind everyone that COVID testing is available at West Coast General Hospital in Tofino and in Bamfield by appointment. You can book through your local doctor or calling the VHA call center. Call center volume has been very high, and some people have had long waits to book their test. But once you can get through to the call center, testing appointments are very available and results are turned around within 24 hours. Today, school districts across the province were required to post their return to school plans. The school district 70 for Alberta Valley and the West Coast was just posted this afternoon, so you can go to their website and read about it. A little more locally, we are sharing COVID-related information on social media. We're continuing our meetings with West Coast General Hospital, RCMP, Fire Department to share local information. A shower facility for the vulnerable population is still operating, and the use of this shower facility has increased over time. The facility is still being funded by the province, and as I mentioned last time, funding for all other activities has ended. The province has cut that funding. Doug mentioned earlier that we're moving forward with an appointment model at the regional district office to serve the public. We've been continuing to serve the public through phone, email, and Zoom meetings. However, there are some cases where meetings with the public are appropriate. So public will be required to phone staff members to book a meeting. We'll use a COVID screening questionnaire. We'll require the public to wear a mask and hand sanitize, as well as provide their contact information for contact tracing purposes. Yeah, and I think that's about all I wanted to mention for today.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any comments or questions? Director Osborne.
Thanks. I just wanted to add that in mid-September or so, there'll be one of the 3 rapid testing machines is coming to Tofino for Nuu-chah-nulth First Nations, and so they'll be able to test up to 2 samples, and it takes 1 hour, and so that's a really great turnaround time, and it's going to make a world of difference, I think, for some of the concerns that the West Coast Nuu-chah-nulth Nations, those in Clayoquot Sound particularly, have been expressing, but certainly Yukulathat and Tokwat too. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. Any further comments? Okay, thank you for your report, Heather. Oh, Douglas, sorry, go ahead. You're muted, Douglas.
Sorry about that. Thank you. For the last item H, I would like to make a couple of comments whenever you're ready for that.
Okay, I had Jenny on first for the recycling app, and then we'll go to you for H. Yeah.
All right, I guess that's my cue. So I wanted to give everyone an update on 3rd Avenue. We are working really hard to try to reopen for October 1st. We've had many delays, but we've been working really hard. We're sort of reduced in staff resources at the moment, as well as delays with procuring a few items, to name a few. But right now what we have, and I've presented, is a layout for 3rd Avenue. Our objective is to make sure that we set it up so that it's safe, especially in the event that we do get a very high spike. We want the site to be safe for not just the public, but also staff. And for that, we've also had to adjust our operating hours. So in order to make sure that we always have 2 staff at any given time there, in order to monitor the new layout, we're going to have to reduce the hours when we reopen for the beginning, and we'll see how things roll out after that. So the hours will be 9:30 to 5 from Tuesday to Saturday. The first week when we reopen, we're going to have shorter hours just to give the staff time to figure out how to use the new layout. So it's going to be significantly different. When you go there, you will be parking in one of the slots, and then at the outside area, you will be entering into the stream of traffic, and you will go through and do your Recycle BC recycling at each location. We will have carts for people to use. They will all be available, a variety of them. So you go, you grab your cart, you put your stuff on there, and you walk yourself through, kind of like an outdoor grocery store in a way. And then the indoors, we're going to have set up for all of the other products. So you've got your paint, hazardous waste, lights, smoke alarms, things like that. And again, it's going to be a significant, I think, improvement to what we have there, and hopefully the public will be impressed with the changes. We also want to put in some washing facilities and improve the way things are. So we are still receiving a lot of enthusiastic recyclers from the community who are excited for the reopening, which will lead into my discussion on the app. And I would love to let everyone know that if you're getting calls, concerns, or questions to do with anything on recycling, you can encourage people to use their lovely app. So I just downloaded it today, actually, believe it or not, because I use the one online usually, but I got mine and I type in my address first thing. So right away, it tells me my pickup schedule for garbage and recycling, which is fantastic. I love that. Soon it will tell you your organics collection if you happen to be in the city of Port Alberni. And then the other thing that I just love is the lookup, right? So where do I bring paint in my area? So paint, latex, full or half cans, it says right here. I could go to the bottle depot or the AV landfill because 3rd Avenue is not closed. But as of October 1st, it will also tell me I can go to 3rd Avenue. So it's really fantastic. It's super helpful. And I can't encourage you enough to please take just 30 seconds. It won't even take that. Download the app, and then anytime anyone asks you anything, you can seem like the master of recycling knowledge yourself. And also please encourage the public to use that. So thank you.
Director Osborne.
Hey, thanks. I have downloaded the app, and last night it sent me a reminder that today was recycling day on the West Coast. Now it happens that I'm not actually a client of pickup of curbside recycling because I live next to my husband's commercial property and use that. So when I went to enter my address actually wasn't in there. Now, is that because I'm not a paying client, or is that some other reason? I thought, wow, maybe this is a great way that when somebody enters their address, especially on the West Coast where we know we have a few gaps in places, new places that are built, and it's hard to know that they're there and they're getting the service. But if they can't find their address, then maybe that means they're not in the ACRD system yet.
I don't know the answer to that, but I love hearing it. So also, you raise a really good point, Josie. If you see anything that's weird or wonderful about the app, let us know because we're still learning this too. So maybe the app is even smarter than we think. And it has said it's not going to tell you because you don't use it. Don't know. But we will look and see. Maybe your address is missing. We don't know. So thank you.
Yeah, and there will be issues with just transferring databases into another type of database, which is probably what's happening with the app, because it's programming. It's going to happen, but that's good. Hopefully, those kind of bugs will be fixed over time. Director Reimer.
Just wondering do you have a plan for communicating what is going on with 3rd Avenue? Because, like I said, it's kind of been lacking. Please.
Yeah, we've tried, especially at the beginning, we've been trying to communicate on a regular basis to please go to the landfill. This is the first time that we've sort of come up with a date to say that we're going to be reopening it. And until then, we've said, like as soon as possible. So you guys are the first to hear about the October 1st. I'm going to pause before we release that until we're just a little bit closer to the date, because I don't want to further infuriate people if we can't make that exact deadline, but we're shooting really hard for it. So yeah, we should probably be putting out communication about mid to late September.
Or even just communicating that renovations are going on, because like I said, people were rumoring that it was just being closed permanently. So even if there's not a date, I think that could go a long way, that it is coming and we are working on it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any further comments or questions? Director McNabb.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with the reopening of 3rd Avenue. Perhaps a sign reopening soon might that's actually on the facility might solve that issue.
Okay. Oh, where did I put it? There it is. Okay, are there any other comments? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Jenny. Okay, and and item H, Douglas, you had a something you'd like to say?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple, just want to highlight a couple of matters in the report. We found it very interesting when we tallied up the number of hours that have been dedicated to the EOC and really just COVID-related matters, not including things like the work that Wendy and others has been doing in trying to get the public back into our committee and board meetings, et cetera, but just the EOC, et cetera, used just under 1,800 hours. And just for reference and context, in a 6-month period, we used 1,800 hours for the ACRD alone, which is the equivalent of one person time. That's 7 hours a day, 5 days a week is 1,820 hours. And then the city, of course, we don't have an exact number for that. That number of approximately 1,000, slightly incomplete, but that sort of a little over 800 of that allows for the people who actually came and sat directly in the EOC from the city staff. So a big impact, and of course, we're not peculiar to that. Local governments all over the province, all over the country, and all over the world, I suppose, have been affected by this in that way. And so I wanted to highlight that. The other thing I wanted to highlight is that throughout the various listings of strategic priorities of the board, I would ask that the board members spend a little time with these lists preceding the strategic planning exercise, just to try to start thinking about the types of things that the board would like to prioritize, either as broad concepts that would include a number of initiatives, or as individual items. It's going to be interesting how this whole exercise unfolds. It'll be different than what the board's done before. And in all cases, at all times, the priorities belong to the board of directors. And the only thing that we say with staff is that in order for the board to be successful in having its priorities executed, is have a matching quantity of quantity and nature of resources available in order to execute and deliver these services to the people, the public we serve. And so that's all part of the consideration. And unless there's any questions, I just want to leave sort of those two thoughts with you. Thank you.
Thanks. Are there any comments or questions? Okay. Dr. McNabb, please.
Motion to receive the reports.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder?
Second.
Thank you, Director.
I have a
Bodner.
question.
Oh, go ahead, Director Cote.
So any questions that we have about this strategic priorities, we should just direct them to staff?
There'll be an email coming out.
I don't want to bring up anything now, but
there'll be an email coming out hopefully later today with a bit of a questionnaire, and then the consultant will be contacting you directly.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we'll say that Director Bodner seconded. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none. All those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, scroll back to the beginning. Okay, that brings us to committee reports, of which there are none, and into member reports. First up is 911 Corporation. Director McNabb.
So I'm not quite sure what we can gather from this. We do have a meeting in mid-October that's a strategy meeting with regards to this issue. The issue really is that Nanaimo SD 69, which is Director Roberts' home abode area, and yours, I think, as well, has been complaining for several years, as long as I've been on the board, with regards to the allocation of funding. So the initial amount that we started with way back was based on the number of shares that each member community owned in the corporation, and we started out at 13.2%, I think it was. sorry, 13.28% of the cost. Now, as with everything, technology going forward, things become more expensive, the system becomes more inclusive, and the costs go up. And so that could have been expected back in 2001. It can be expected into the next decade as well. But Nanaimo is in a spot right now. Nanaimo City and Nanaimo Regional District South, they have an issue with regards to the services they're using, and it's going to terminate. So they're putting the pressure on North Island 911 to restructure the way this thing is calculated, so that Nanaimo North or 69 will stay in the corporation and participate in the funding. So it'd be highly detrimental to everybody that's in the system to have Nanaimo North pull out of it and join some kind of new service to the south. And I mean, I think that we operate very, very efficiently. I think that the bang for the buck is excellent, considering the level of service that we have and the redundancy of service that we have. I mean, I'm not aware of any time, as long as I've been on the board, that we've actually had a North Island 911 failure in the system, failure to be able to communicate as we do normally. So that's, you know, to do with the staff and the redundancy and the technology that we've developed. But I mean, this situation lies here. I mean, I personally, my take on this is if we ended up around the proportion that we did when we started in 2001 at around the 13.2% of the cost, that in my mind would be acceptable, but I'm not a one-man band here. The board is a decision to actually make, and I don't really think that making it today and making it in public is beneficial to our negotiations. So I really would like the board to really go over these sheets that have been given to you to see what direction they can give to me to bring to the negotiations. And there is a remote possibility that Nanaimo South may join our system. So because they're going to be out in the wind here pretty quickly, and they've left it really, really tight, and they haven't given themselves enough time to move from one system to another, and I don't know what that's about. I imagine we'll hear about it in our session, but I think in order to keep the cost effectiveness of the group that we have, we need to make some adjustment here, and not because we should be, but because it likely is just on a negotiation basis something we might have to do. So I don't know if anybody's got any direct questions with regards to this, but I certainly want every one of you to go through these figures and see what the balance is, and see, we'll have to jointly decide what our game plan is in an in-camera meeting, and but I need to do that before mid-October. So anybody's got questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you for that.
A question that I have had, and I haven't been able to get this from staff, is what somebody in a house like you, John, or you, Cal, are paying for North Island 911 for your home, based on what we pay in Port Alberni for our home. Because there's a lot of commercial, industrial, recreational facilities in 69, and I think that they're bearing the brunt of this cost. I don't think the actual homeowner is, I think we're all within dollars of each other as to what it's costing us. A very minimal amount on our taxation. And I suspect that it's a very minimal amount on people that are outside of like in 69 as well. That's just a big figure.
Yeah. I'm not certain I'd be able to answer that off the top of my head, but I can come back.
Yeah, I mean, it just might be pull out your tax form and see what it says. It's
Yeah,
a
I'm just-
separate item on yours. Sometimes it isn't a separate item.
And it doesn't come out to me as being a separate item, but I haven't looked at it in a while, so I'll get back. Just for the board to know, I'm probably gonna have to leave in the next 5 to 10 minutes to pick up my kids from daycare. So Dr. Osborne will take over at some point. I'm a bit keen to hear these member reports, though. So next item is: are there any other comments or questions for Dr. McNabb? No? Okay. So that brings us to the Regional Library. Director Cote.
Thank you. So libraries are opening up to walk through in larger branches. So they are opening slowly. There's the communities are keep asking for us to open up libraries the way that they used to. Things just aren't going to be the same with COVID, but we are opening.
Mm-hmm.
We have a meeting this Friday. Thanks.
Yeah, I sure miss bringing kids to the story times that used to happen. Director McNabb, go ahead.
So I'm just wondering if there's, and perhaps Director Cody might not know this, if there is a cost benefit to the downscaling of service during COVID for the libraries?
We're getting reports. We'll probably have something on Friday. There's a lot of extra costs. There's a lot of librarians that are still working behind the closed doors, getting staff ready so that they can open the doors and making sure that everyone is safe, either staff or the public. Extra ebooks has a cost to it. There's a lot of new costs that have arisen. Extra cleaning, deep cleaning. We'll find out more on Friday, and I'm sure that we'll have a report coming out.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Okay. Anyone else? No. Next up is the Air Quality Council. Dr. Bodner, do you have anything to report?
No, thank you. There has been a meeting this month, so there's nothing to report at this time.
Thank you. West Coast Aquatic Board, Director Osborne? Nope.
Right. Did we skip the Alberni Valley Chamber of Commerce?
We did. My apologies.
Okay.
Thank you. And I was going to chime in and say no report.
Okay. AVICC, Director Cote?
Thank you. So UBCM is in September. AVICC is piggybacking September 22nd. If you're not signing up for UBCM, there's no cost for AVICC convention, that's piggybacking. But if you're not registering for UBCM, you may want to, there'll be a process where you can email and register for AVICC, and I would ask you to do so because you could then vote for director at large, and we have Director Cindy Solda running for that position. She's held it for the past year, and I think she's a worthwhile candidate for us to make the effort. If you're not with AVICC or with UBCM, to please register for AVICC and vote. And for your information, I was acclaimed first vice president of AVICC. That's my report.
Congratulations. Okay, so I think that brings us to the Beaver Creek. That brings us to the, there you go. Sorry, John. The Beaver Creek Water Advisory Committee and the West Island Woodlands Advisory Group.
Okay, West Island Woodlands has no report. Beaver Creek Advisory, basically, I guess the only comment is we're sort of about 3/4 of the way through the project on Lamarck and whatever the next one over is. It has been more problematic than I would like to see as far as a contract is concerned. It's $900,000 contract, and I have had several complaints from the residents with regards to the performance of the developer or the contractor. So, but that happens. So that's it. No big errors. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Cote, Ag Dev Committee.
Thank you. So we had the Ag Plan implementation progress report in our agenda. So that'll be the report.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Great. Okay, would we like to have a motion to receive the reports?
So moved.
Thank you. Seconded by Director McNabb. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. So it's at this point where we will recess the meeting and I will take my leave. I have to go get the kids. I may rejoin, however, because there's a chance you'll still be talking by the time I get back. So, but thank you for taking over, Director Osborne, and I'll let you handle the recess.
You're
Take
welcome.
care, John.
Where is it? So first of all, just before we do that, was there any questions, Wendy, that came in from the public?
Hi, no questions or comments were received from the public with respecting this agenda.
Thank you very much. Directors meeting in order to have the hospital district meeting.
You cut out there. Could you repeat, please?
Could we have a motion to recess the meeting to conduct the hospital district meeting? Thank you, Director McNabb, Director Cole, and all in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? None. Motion carried. So flip open your hospital agenda, which I will also do. Oh dear. Sorry, you're gonna have to give me a second here. Okay. So we'll call to order our hospital district board meeting for 4:33 and recognize that we are all coming to this Zoom meeting from various different territories, many of us on Nechalath territories. And I would ask for a motion, please, to approve the agenda. Thank you, Director Roberts, seconded by Director McNabb. All in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Seeing none or hearing none, motion is carried. So we have some meeting minutes from the hospital district meeting of July 22nd for adoption. Director McNabb moves adoption, seconded by Director Roberts. Thank you. Any errors or omissions? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. I just noticed in the, it's very minor, but in the details of who was president, Tanya Shannon's listed as Directoral Area A Director instead of Electoral Area B Director.
Thank you. We will fix that. Okay. Any others? All right, so we'll make that small amendment. All in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? None. Motion carried. Okay, so we'll go into reports, and first off is Bob Beckett from Banfield.
No cue.
I think he said no report. Alberni Clackwood Continuing Care Society, Director McNabb, anything?
No report, no meeting at this point.
Thank you. West Coast Native Healthcare Society, Director Cote?
No report. Thanks.
All right. Tofino General Hospital, no report. I already told you in the other meeting about the rapid test machine that's coming to Tofino. It won't be based at the hospital. It'll be based at the NTC Nurses Station, which is just down the block. Anything from you, Director Cole or Director Rob? sorry, Alberni-Clayoquot Health Network. Anything there, Director Cote? Gonna assume not. You're still muted there.
Sorry, hit the wrong button. The Alberni-Clayoquot Health Network had a they had meetings in July and August, but they were just conversations, not really a formal meeting. For updates, we had meetings over the summer also, including the West Coast Family Resource Coalition. Keeping in touch, it's been very interesting to hear about what's happening with First Nations and how our communities are doing. Looking forward to September so we can resume. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Anything from West Coast General?
I have a question. Sure. We haven't heard from the hospital or physicians to the board, and we were supposed to be getting annual reports or up to quarterly. So it would be nice to invite someone from the hospital just to have a report on how they're doing and if there's anything we can do for them. Thanks.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for that. Yes, you're right. We had established a bit of a schedule with them for some more regular communications, but I think COVID really upended that. And obviously they've been incredibly busy, as have local governments. So yeah, I think it probably feels like the right time. Thank you. Okay, unless there's anything else we've missed, that's that. Wendy, any public?
No, nothing was received.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, in that case, that brings us to the end of the meeting. So a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Director Robert. Director Cote gets a second. All in favor? Thank you, none opposed. Motion carried. Okay, so we're back into the regional district meeting, having reconvened, and we do have a lengthy motion to move us in camera to deal with a number of items that we are able to close the meeting to the public pursuant to the community charter. So we do have sections 91A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the regional district. 91B, personal information about an identifiable individual who is being considered for an award or honor. 91C, labor relations or other employee relations. 91I, the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege. 91J, information that is prohibited or information that if were present in a document would be prohibited from disclosure under Section 21 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And 92B, the consideration of information received and held in confidence relating to negotiations between the regional district and a provincial government or the federal government, or both, or between a provincial government or a federal government, or both and a third party. So may I have a seconder, please?